Chapter 912. Complete version. The latest chapter on the medical skills of the Crown Princess. Hit me. Hit me. You are not a man if you don't hit me. Qin Yuru raised her face and said harshly, staring at Di Yan crazily. Being stared at by her crazy eyes, Di Yan couldn't help but feel scared. He took a step back and turned to walk inside. I won't argue with a crazy woman like you. Qin Yuru took 2 steps forward and followed Di Yan. She originally wanted to quarrel with Di Yan, but Di Yan walked too fast for her to catch up. They entered old Madam's yard one after another. When they entered the main room, they found that not only old Madam was there, but also Countess Yong, Madame Sher. Both of them looked bad. Madame Sher's eyes were a little red. Obviously, she had cried to old Madam just now. Di Yan and Qin Yuru bowed to old Madam. Old Madam waved to Qin Yuru and said, Yuru, come to Grandma. Grandma. Qin Yuru walked to old Madam with her eyes also red. Sit down first. Old Madam took her hand and asked her to sit down beside her. Then she sighed and patted her hand, saying, Yuru, don't blame your mother. She had no choice. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done such a thing. Qin Yuru felt a chill in her heart. She wiped away her tears and stared at Countess Yong with hatred, saying, Grandma, what do you mean? Did someone force mother-in-law to do such a thing? My mother trusted my mother-in-law so much and let her take care of everything, but she actually did such a thing. She was greedy for so many years. My mother's dowry shop was the same as not having it. If that's the case, why did she make such a beautiful dowry list in the first place? Her words made old Madam feel embarrassed. She sighed softly and comforted Qin Yuru. Yuru, it's not what you think. Originally, it was given to your mother. Since it was given to your mother, of course, it would be left to your mother. Everything belongs to your mother. But something happened at that time. Your mother-in-law couldn't handle the cash flow, so she used your mother's share. Grandma, do you mean that you also know it? Qin Yuru stared at old Madam and said with hatred. I don't mean that. Old Madam didn't know how to explain at the moment. Grandma, my mother trusts you so much and listens to everything you say, but you. Qin Yuru covered her face with a handkerchief and burst into tears. Old Madam was annoyed. She frowned and glared at Countess Yong. Countess Yong hurriedly explained, Yuru, the situation was very bad at that time. Your father-in-law had a serious accident. If we didn't take care of it, he would lose his position and be removed from office. I had no choice but to use your mother's money. Originally, I thought that after a period of time, when the mansion was better, I would compensate your mother again. I didn't expect that this matter has been delayed for a long time. The longer it is delayed, the more money it will cost. Grandma, do you mean that I haven't fully recovered yet? Qin Yuru put down the handkerchief covering her face and said coldly. Now, it's almost finished. Yuru, don't worry. When it's all done, I'll definitely give you and your mother all the money. Countess Yong promised. All the money for me and my mother. If I didn't find out this time, would I never make up for it? Grandma, I've been married into the mansion for 3 years. In the past 3 years, I listened to everything you said in the mansion, but you always looked down on me and made trouble for me. Not only did you help Di Yan torture me, but you also promoted your concubine to a higher position than me. I guess that in a few years, I will lose my life here. Qin Yuru said coldly. She said coldly. Since she had made trouble this time, she didn't intend to end it well. Yuru, how can you say that about your grandma? Even if your grandma is a little biased, she won't be like what you said. Old Madam rebuked. Granny knows best whether it's like this or not. Previously, when I had a miscarriage, Granny sent some medicine over. Today, I had someone take a look at it, and they said that the medicine has a taste that will hinder children. Granny, do you want to take my life, or do you want me to never have a son and make way for other women? At that time, my dowry, and everything I have will belong to Di Yan. Chin Yuru said harshly. Yuru, what nonsense are you talking about? Hearing this, old madam banged the table heavily and shouted. Someone will know whether I'm talking nonsense or not. Chin Yuru trembled with anger. As expected, Grandma also knew about it. Looking at Grandma's face, she didn't look like she used to love her. Chin Yuru, if you talk nonsense like this again, I'll divorce you. Don't think Grandma will ask me to give in to you again and again. Seeing Chin Yuru's aggressive look, Di Yan also stood up angrily, pointed at Chin Yuru and scolded loudly. Divorce me? Well, let's tear apart all the things first, and then we'll talk about who divorced whom. Chin Yuru also banged the table, stood up and said, in the past 20 years, you owe my mother and me money. Even if the whole Duke Yong's mansion pays for it, it's almost enough. You bitch. Di Yan was so angry that he felt dizzy and reached out to hit her again. But he was stopped by his mother. Countess Yong winked at Di Yan and said to Chin Yuru with a flattering smile, Yuru, don't be angry. Your cousin is always so generous, and he has been like this since he was a child. But he is very kind to his own people. When I was sick and you were sick, he was the one who took care of us. I was sick. When I was sick, wasn't he playing with those cheap women in the yard? Chin Yuru gnashed her teeth in anger. She would have been fine if she hadn't said this, but now she was even more furious. She married into Duke Yong's mansion for 3 years, but Di Yan never liked her for a day. When they met, they quarreled. When Di Yan returned to the mansion, he mostly went to the yards of concubines and concubines to fool around. Usually, he was not seen at all. When she was sick, he came to take care of her because old madam and Duke Yong forced him to come. If they hadn't forced him to come, Di Yan would have been willing to show his face. Even though he was forced to come, Di Yan still made sarcastic remarks to her and said a lot of sarcastic and contemptuous words. In the beginning, she still wanted to save Di Yan. Even when she was angry, she tried hard to suppress her temper and occasionally complained to old madam. But now, she hated the whole Duke Yong's mansion, so how could she be good to Di Yan? Chin Yuru, do you know how to speak? What do you mean by cheap women? No matter how cheap they are innocent when they come into the mansion. Unlike some women who come into the mansion with no innocence and still think they are right. Di Yan raised his head and sneered loudly. But before he finished his words, he had been slapped hard in the face, which made him take 2 steps back. He looked at Countess Yong in astonishment and said in disbelief, Mother, did you slap me? Yuru is not in good health and is in a bad mood now. How can you add fuel to the fire? What can't a husband and wife talk about? Do you need to fight like this? Countess Yong said with trembling fingers. She had to do this. If she let Di Yan continue, it would be more troublesome. Old madam, who was sitting in the upper seat, already looked sullen. Mother, how could you slap me for an unclean woman? Di Yan didn't hear Countess Yong's words at all. He took 2 steps back and shouted aggrievedly. Then he turned and strode away. He didn't want to get involved in this matter. Anyway, it was not his business. Yen. Countess Yong hurriedly took 2 steps forward and wanted to pull Di Yan's clothes. But he ran so fast that she didn't catch his clothes. Grandma, I have sent the supervisor of Fanglan embroidery shop and 2 sets of account books to the government. And some medicine I drank before was sent to me by Granny. Seeing Di Yan leave, Chin Yuru sneered. She had no more thoughts about Di Yan, but she would never let Di Yan take advantage of her. What? You sent it to the government? Countess Yong screamed. Her body went limp and she almost fainted. Fortunately, an old maid beside her had quick eyes and hands and held her. Mother. Countess Yong turned to old madam and said sadly. If this matter was really torn apart, her career as a countess would come to an end. Yuru, get those back. Old madam's face darkened. She said to Chin Yuru in a stern voice, and her voice became urgent. This was the first time she had spoken to Chin Yuru like this. Chin Yuru laughed crazily. She laughed so hard that tears fell from her eyes. Yuru, what are you doing? Call them back. Old Madam slammed her hand on the table heavily. I will explain to you about your granny. How will others think of our mansion when our family is in such a mess? A family? Chin Yuru laughed and looked crazy. Are we a family? If I stay with your family, I am afraid that I will lose my life. When I went out, I asked someone to inform my father that I want to go back to General's mansion. I want to divorce Di Yen. What nonsense are you talking about? Old Madam stood up in shock. She really did not expect that Chin Yuru would do such a thing. What nonsense am I talking about? Doesn't Grandma know? If no one caused my miscarriages, how could it always be like this? Grandma, don't tell me that Madam Sure also doesn't know this. She clearly wants to kill me. Even if she doesn't kill me, she wants to suppress me so that I won't be able to give birth to any children. Chin Yuru gritted her teeth and pointed at Countess Yong. Countess Yong covered her face and cried. Mother, it's not like this. How could I do such a thing? Yuru misunderstood me. Go and get those back. Old Madam raised her eyebrows and said to Chin Yuru in a stern voice. Her face was as gloomy as water. In the past, when she treated Chin Yuru, she was full of love. Even if Chin Yuru got into big trouble, Old Madam would protect Chin Yuru. Now, Chin Yuru was not only surprised, but also seemed to be expected. I won't go and get it. This time, I must go against her in court. Chin Yuru screamed loudly. Guards, take young madam away. Old Madam said with a pale face and disappointment. Two strong old maids rushed over and were about to take Chin Yuru away. Old Madam, I don't know what Yuru did to make you feel uncomfortable. How could you treat her like this? A cold voice suddenly came from the door. Chapter 9:13. Chin Huayong came. Father, save me. Hearing Chin Huayong's voice, Chin Yuru stepped back and screamed. The door opened, and Chin Huayong stood at the door with a cold face. Several servant girls and old maids stepped back and did not dare to stop him. The general had a murderous aura from the battlefield of life and death. How could these servants resist it? Chin Huayong walked in, and Chin Yuru hurriedly ran behind him, wiping her tears and crying. Father, save me, Father, save me. Seeing Chin Huayong at this time, both Old Madam and Countess Yong were deeply embarrassed. Old Madam, Countess, why did Countess do such a thing? If you really don't want to be Madame D's dowry, you don't have to send these shops. In the situation at that time, even if Duke Yong's mansion didn't send these shops as dowry, would we force them? Why did Duke Yong's mansion do this? Chin Huayong had already understood the matter. After saluting, his eyes fell coldly on the two madams of Duke Yong's mansion. His words made the two madams blush, and they did not know how to deal with it. You not only took back the dowry that was sent out, but also reported false accounts. When Madame D and I returned to the capital, your mansion once asked me for some money, saying that it was a loss for so many years. Now I heard that it was not the case. I don't know whether Old Madam and Countess feel guilty for embezzling the money. You treat your own children like this, aren't you afraid that your own children will be disappointed? Chin Huayong said coldly. He had never liked Duke Yong's mansion. If Duke Yong's mansion had not kept Madame D hanging, Chin Yuru would not have made such a mess. Thinking of it now, he was even more furious. You treat your own children like this, let alone others. Since Old Madam and Countess dislike Yuru so much, I will take her back. No matter what she has done, she doesn't deserve to die. Seeing that Old Madam and Countess Yong did not speak, Chin Huayong said again. Then he cupped his hands to them and turned to go out. Chin Yuru hurriedly followed him. Old Madam wanted to stop him. She opened her mouth helplessly, but did not know what to say. She could only watch Chin Huayong's parents leave. Mother, what now? What should we do? Countess Yong collapsed on the chair and burst into tears. It's not just about me. It's my mother, shut up. Old Madam scolded and waved her hand. All the servants in the room left. When the others went out, Old Madam sat down with a frown. Her eyebrows were tightly knotted. It was really difficult to deal with the current situation. Mother, what should we do now? If this leads to, our whole mansion will be in trouble. Countess Yong cried in a low voice. Countess Yong was at a loss at the moment. If Qin Yuru really fought with her to the end, she would not be able to bear it. Countess Yong originally wanted to suppress this matter with the righteousness of the elder, but it was clear that Qin Yuru was in a life-and-death struggle. Countess Yong didn't know how to deal with it now. Speaking of this matter, she also felt very wronged. This kind of thing was not something that she could accomplish alone. Even though she had been greedy, it wasn't much. Now, she was the one who had to take the blame. How could she take the blame? Shut up, I need to think about it. Yes. Old Madam was in a bad temper now. She banged on the table heavily and said harshly. This matter was not something she could handle now. Who knew that Qin Yuru would reveal this matter and make a fuss to the yamen regardless of anything? Since he had entered the yamen, and the attitude of the Qin family was like this, it would be extremely difficult to resolve this matter. At least the power of Duke Yong's mansion could not stop it. Go and invite Duke Yong over and let him deal with this matter. Just say, we can't deal with this matter anymore. If we really dig up this matter, the whole Duke Yong's mansion will not be able to bear it. Old Madam's face looked very gloomy behind the half-closed door. Yes, yes, your wife will go now. Countess Yong felt as if she had been pardoned. She hurriedly stood up and ran to the door without staggering. When she was at the door, she almost tripped. She hurriedly reached out to hold the door frame to stabilize herself, and then hurriedly went out. The group of maids and old maids who had followed her hurriedly followed. What a sin, what a sin. In the main room, Old Madam sighed heavily. Miss, you really guessed it. This matter has been known throughout the capital city. Now people are talking about Countess Yong's low character. She not only coveted her daughter-in-law's dowry, but also forcibly occupied her sister-in-law's dowry. For so many years, since her sister-in-law got married, the shop has been in her hands. 2 sets of account books have been put into the yamen of the capital governor. Everyone is waiting for the yamen of the capital governor to publicly investigate this matter. Qing reported the news she had heard to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru closed the sachet, which was embroidered with a few purple bamboos. Under the bamboos, there was a small grassland with a few small flowers on it, which was very elegant. There were some medicines in it to avoid snakes and insects. Because there were a lot of medicines, she was very careful when closing the sachet. The needle couldn't be too big, and it couldn't be too tight. Otherwise, it would not look good and lose its original shape. After hearing Qing's words, she still closed the sachet carefully with a calm look. When the sachet was completely closed, she cut the thread in her hand and said, "It won't be opened." "It won't be opened?" "Miss, so many people have seen it, and there are witnesses and evidence. It can be said that the evidence is irrefutable." Chu Lu took the scissors handed over by Xiao Wanru and asked in confusion, "I think this matter can't be suppressed even if I want to. Since the first Miss Qin wants to expose it, she probably doesn't want to settle it peacefully." "It doesn't matter whether she wants to settle it peacefully or not," Xiao Wanru said with a slight smile. Her black hair, which had just been washed, was casually scattered among her hair. The faint light softened her eyes and eyebrows, and her natural charm turned into a kind of softness, making her look more delicate and beautiful. There came the voices of "Prince" and "Prince" from the door. Chu Luchen came over. As soon as Xiao Wanru got up, the curtain was lifted, and Chu Luchen had come in. He was dressed in a navy blue robe with golden bamboo patterns, which made him look handsome and elegant. The servant girls on both sides carefully retreated. "Why are you still doing it? Didn't I tell you to go to bed early?" Chu Luchen came over and reached out to pick up the sachet that Xiao Wanru put on the table. With a gentle look and a trace of doting and heartache in his voice, he said, "Such a dim light hurts your eyes. If you really want to do it, you can ask the servant girls to do it. The servant girls have also made some. Your Highness, you can distribute it to other accompanying people. The one I made here is yours." Xiao Wanru picked up the sachet and gave it to Chu Luchen. "Look, it is filled with your favorite smell, not only the smell of insect repellent, but also the smell of some good incense you used in the past. It can clear your mind and calm your mind. Do you like it?" The smell of medicine in the sachet was very strong, but it was accompanied by a very light fragrance. It was mixed with the smell of medicine and was not very clear. If one smelled it carefully, one could still feel that it was the fragrance that Chu Luchen occasionally burned in the study. "Zhuozhuo made it for me, so I naturally like it. But if you do it like this, I will also feel sorry for you. Why are you still not sleeping at this time? Didn't you say that I would come late tonight?" Chu Luchen pulled Xiao Wanru to sit on the bed and reached out to take her into his arms habitually. "I can't sleep anyway, so I was talking about Qin Yuru." Xiao Wanru did not intend to hide it from Chu Luchen, so she said bluntly. "I asked Qing to inquire about it, and Qing just came back." Xiao Wanru said. Chu Luchen lifted a strand of black hair falling on her eyebrows. The hair was half dry and hung down, making her face even smaller, as if it was only the size of a palm. Between her delicate eyebrows and eyes, her eyes were as clear as water, extremely beautiful and charming. "What did you find out?" Chu Luchen asked casually and leaned back, half leaning on the cushion on the bed. Xiao Wanru was pulled by him and happened to lean on him. Xiao Wanru blushed and simply closed her eyes. Qin Yuru made trouble and made Duke Yong's mansion the target of public criticism. Qing went to inquire about it. She said that the capital governor's yamen has taken over it. This matter will be suppressed. Chu Luchen said lazily and reached out to change a position for Xiao Wanru so that she could lean on his arm more comfortably. "Is it because of Prince Yu?" Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes slightly. In fact, it was not a question, but it sounded like a question. "Chu Liuyue's hands are indeed very long, and the Empress will not like it," Chu Luchen said meaningfully. Xiao Wanru had once mentioned this to him before. At that time, it had been proved that Chu Liyue was behind Duke Yong's mansion. "What about the Emperor?" Xiao Wanru thought for a while and asked. "The Empress would not like it even for the sake of her daughter. Uncle dislikes it even more. Chu Luchen raised the corner of his mouth and his long eyelashes fell on his pale eyes, as if he was mocking her. "He doesn't want others to know what he likes or dislikes." There seemed to be another meaning in his words. Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and did not ask any more. Chu Luchen would deal with the Emperor, and she believed that he could handle it well. How will Ningyuan Army General's mansion deal with this matter? Will it implicate the people of the General's mansion? Xiao Wanru actually had some scruples. Although this matter should not involve Aunt Shui, she was afraid that there would be a deviation in this matter, so she subconsciously asked Chu Luchen. "Of course not. Ningyuan Army General is not a stupid person. He is not as simple as you think." Chu Luchen said, "You don't have to worry. I have said before that even if you make a big trouble, I will be there. Don't worry." After saying that, he gently patted her back and opened his eyes with a smile. His eyebrows and eyes were vivid, and he was handsome and charming. Xiao Wanru subconsciously raised her eyes and met his eyes. She felt sweet in her heart. After being reborn, it was actually difficult for her to trust others, but Chu Luchen was not one of them. It seemed that he would protect her at any time, which inexplicably made her feel at ease. There will be no trouble outside, but there will be trouble in the palace. Chapter 9:14. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign small/say net wonderful pop-up window free reading. There's trouble in the palace? Xiao Wanru's watery eyes rippled slightly and she said in confusion, since there will be trouble in the palace, why can't there be trouble outside? Whether it was inside or outside the palace, it was actually the emperor's intention. Since it was the emperor's intention, how could he allow the palace to make a ruckus inside? But outside the palace the noise was loud but the ripples were small. My uncle cares a lot about his reputation. Chu Liuchen's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and his words sounded even more meaningful. Xiao Wanru frowned and thought for a while, but she still didn't understand what he meant. She couldn't help tugging at his sleeve and asked, "What do you mean, Your Highness? We are already married. You don't have to call me Prince or Your Highness in private." Chu Lu squinted at her discontentedly. "Master?" Xiao Wanru asked tentatively. "Call my name." Chu Luchen looked down at Xiao Wanru, and his eyes were full of Xiao Wanru's figure. When he looked at her like this, it seemed that Xiao Wanru was his whole world. Xiao Wanru didn't have time to blush again. After a little embarrassment, she called hesitantly, "Chu Luchen." Chu Liuchen's voice was very low and soft, as if something had scratched his heart, making him feel soft and numb. He seemed to be pleased by something and smiled from the bottom of his heart to his face. He reached out to gently hold Xiao Wanru's little face and looked at her pink petal-like cherry lips. He couldn't help but breathe quickly. "You don't have to put your surname first," Chu Luchen said gently. The affection in his eyes flowed under the light, making people feel that he was unparalleled in the world. If there was a man in the world who could be the handsome and romantic peerless young man in the book, there was no one else but Chu Luchen. Xiao Wanru opened her cherry lips slightly as if she was bewitched. "Luchen." Chu Luchen leaned to one side and pressed her under his body. He kissed her red lips, which he had been looking forward to for a long time. Xiao Wanru almost woke up stiffly from the intoxication. In her 2 lives, she had never been so close to someone. Although they were husband and wife now, Chu Luchen had repeatedly said that he would keep a distance from her. She didn't expect that he would be so passionate at this moment. Yes, he was as passionate as fire. Chu Liuchen's whole body seemed to be hot, which made Xiao Wanru's heart also hot. The blazing heat almost intoxicated her, but she immediately panicked and almost subconsciously pushed him away. Chu Luchen fell beside her. Xiao Wanru tried her best to calm down her breathing and her burning passion, but Chu Luchen seemed to be silent. Finally, she couldn't help turning her head with a blush. A pair of handsome eyes came into view. Chu Luchen was looking at her shy look sideways without moving. "What are you looking at?" Xiao Wanru said rudely. By the time she finished speaking, her face had turned even redder. "Look at my zhuozhuo." Chu Luchen turned sideways and held Xiao Wanru in his arms. After a while, his body temperature had become much lower. Xiao Wanru buried her head in his arms and curled her lips, saying, "What's so good about me? This prince's princess is naturally the most beautiful, but of course, only this prince can look at her." Xiao Wanru, who was blushing, was even more charming. Chu Luchen felt that he could hide his zhuozhuo better. The most precious thing in his heart could not be peeped at by anyone. "You're talking nonsense again." Xiao Wanru reached out her hand and gently pinched Chu Liuchen's waist. Chu Luchen exaggeratedly cried out in pain, "Your Highness, you showed mercy. If Imperial Grandmother saw it, she might come to settle the score with you." Chu Liuchen's teasing words reminded Xiao Wanru. She slightly poked her head out of Chu Liuchen's arms and said, "Is tomorrow the day when the imperial physician from the palace will come to treat your highness?" In fact, Chu Liuchen's body had almost recovered now. Of course, only a few people knew about it. Although the Empress Dowager and the Emperor knew that Chu Liuchen's body was much better, they were still worried, so they specially asked the imperial physician from the palace to check his pulse every week. Of course, to the outside world, it was said that it was acupuncture to treat Chu Liuchen's body. Since it was acupuncture, even if it was just for show, he had to take off his clothes. On the day he entered the palace, Chu Luchen had mentioned it to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru had kept it in mind. At this time, she suddenly thought of it and couldn't help asking. "It's okay. It's just checking his pulse. It's not a big deal." Chu Luchen said casually. Since he has recovered, there's no need to check his pulse. Anyway, There are people in our mansion, so there's no need to invite people from the palace. Xiao Wanru was still a little worried. The imperial physician in the palace who checked Chu Liuchen's pulse was also his full-time imperial physician. He was very loyal to the Empress Dowager, and only he knew Chu Liuchen's physical condition. However, Xiao Wanru thought it was better to keep an eye on him. If someone wanted to harm this imperial physician, it was very likely that Chu Liuchen would be harmed. "Zhuozhuo, are you worried about me?" Chu Liuchen said with a smile. He was in a very good mood. Thinking that the girl in front of him was worried about him wholeheartedly, his heart softened. He had always been cold and heartless, not only to others but also to himself. He had never thought that one day, he would fall in love with a girl like an ordinary man. Moreover, except for the girl in front of him, he didn't like anyone else, and he wouldn't care. No matter how many beautiful girls were in front of him, they were just ordinary people. "I'm talking to you about something serious." Xiao Wanru blushed and pushed him. "I'm talking about something serious. Don't worry. With you here, even if someone wants to plot against me, he can't. I heard that Zhuozhuo's medical skills are very good, and you have saved old Madame of Marquis Xing's mansion before. Of course, if you meet such an ignorant person in the future, Zhuozhuo, you'd better not reach out to him. Just let him die. Don't care too much about him. Zhuozhuo, you only need to care about me." Chu Liuchen said seriously, but his eyes were shining brightly with a smile. Xiao Wanru reached out to cover his eyes and had to sigh with emotion. Fortunately, Prince Chen had a gloomy and cold temperament. Otherwise, just based on his appearance, there would be many women in the world who would come for him. Even if they just looked at him silently, they would be willing to do so. Her hand was pulled down by Chu Liuchen, and then he kissed her gently on the corner of her mouth. The softness and touch made Xiao Wanru withdraw her hands suddenly, and her face turned red. He really didn't forget to flirt with her all the time. This was a totally different relationship from the time when she first met Prince Chen. Thinking of this, she frowned slightly. She thought of her previous life and Ji Huasheng in her previous life. Recently, she thought of something again. It seemed that she and Chu Liuchen knew each other because of Ji Huasheng, but it was just her imagination and speculation. There was no real basis for her speculation, but she just thought so. She didn't know if the first time she met Chu Liuchen in her previous life was the same as the first time she met him in this life. She felt an inexplicable sadness in her heart and reached out to hold Chu Liuchen's waist. Although she knew that she was reborn, she couldn't remember anything about Chu Liuchen and her in the previous life. But she was sure that they knew each other in the previous life. Not only did they know each other, but there might be some other things between them. Chu Liuchen was full of joy for Xiao Wanru's initiative to approach him, but he was still dissatisfied with her slightly frowning eyebrows. He reached out to gently rub her eyebrows to remove the trace of sadness at the bottom of her eyebrows. "Don't think about anything unhappy." "Oh," Xiao Wanru said softly. She raised her watery eyes and a faint smile appeared on her white and tender face, which made people feel that she was unparalleled in the world with a pink face and red lips. Xiao Wanru bit her lip and avoided Chu Liuchen's burning gaze. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice and she asked, "You haven't told me why there is a disturbance in the imperial palace, but there is no disturbance outside the imperial palace." Knowing that she was shy, Chu Liuchen didn't force her anymore. He just held her hand with a smile and said, "My uncle values his reputation the most. Since Chu Luiyue is involved in this matter, we can't let people outside the palace laugh at us. As for the consequences caused by this matter, my uncle must be furious. He doesn't intend to pass the throne to me yet." Hearing that, Chu Liuyue's expression became serious. "Why not?" Xiao Wanru was surprised. The inheritance of the throne had to be completed by a son. In fact, she still didn't understand why the old emperor made Chu Liuchen the crown prince in the previous life. Even though Prince Zhou and Prince Xian had accidents at that time, at least there was Chu Luiyue. Or it could be said that there was only Chu Luiyue. In fact, the emperor had no other choice but to pass on the throne to him. If there was a son, no one would pass on the throne to his nephew. However, the result was that Chu Luqian was made the crown prince instead of Chu Luyue, who was expected by everyone. Could it be that there was something fishy about this? Maybe he hasn't made up his mind yet. Anyway, there's no hurry. Let's take our time. Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou are not convinced by each other and have many advantages. In fact, it's very difficult to choose. Chu Luqian said lazily and reached out to stroke Xiao Wanru's beautiful hair. Xiao Wanru felt that this feeling was like the feeling when she stroked a cat in the past. Stroking the thick and soft hair of a cat, she felt very comfortable. Could it be that he stroked her as a cat? She glared at him fiercely, forcibly pulled down his big hand, and held it backhand to prevent his hand from messing around again. Unexpectedly, Chu Luqian got someone's idea and enjoyed the gentle holding of the beauty's hand in his arms with a peace of mind. Why not? It's always better to make the throne early. Xiao Wanru said. After thinking for a while, she bit her cherry lips and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. She had hidden these words in her heart for a long time, but now she especially wanted to ask. She didn't know whether it was because the current mood was just right or because of other reasons. Xiao Wanru looked at Chu Luqian with her watery eyes and said bluntly, "Luqian, what do you think?" Her question was very abrupt, but Chu Luqian understood it. He held Xiao Wanru's little hand and gently squeezed her palm. Then he said naturally, "The world originally belongs to me, so why should I not take it? Those who go against heaven will not be tolerated." Chapter 9:15. His Majesty is your uncle. Xiao Wanru said. She felt very surprised that Luqian didn't pass it on to his son but passed it on to his nephew. Since it can be passed on to the younger brother, it's not a problem to pass it on to my nephew. Chu Luqian said, holding Xiao Wanru's hand and gently rubbing it. Only his eyes were cold and bottomless, as if there was something in the darkest and darkest depths. Xiao Wanru's heartbeat was very calm, and she listened to him quietly. It was actually normal for Chu Luqian to say such bold and rebellious words. In the previous life, he had also come to this step. Although she didn't know the reason why he did it in the previous life, no matter what, she felt very sad when she saw his ruthless and desperate face in the previous life. Did he have a bad life in the previous life? Even though he finally stood at the top, he was actually not happy. Your Highness, do you like it? Xiao Wanru asked softly, holding back the bitterness in her heart. If I don't take this step, I will be doomed eternally. But I like it very much with Zhuozhua accompanying me. Chu Luqian said with a smile, at least I won't be lonely. I like it very much with Zhuozhua accompanying me. His voice was very gentle, calm and steady, as if nothing could baffle him. Her heart, which had been a little restless, inexplicably calmed down. In an instant, it seemed that something had hit her heart, making her feel sour and bitter. How did Chu Luqian live in the previous life? The bloody corpses of the women covered the entire palace. Their eyes were filled with despair as if they had fallen into the eternal darkness. I will accompany you. Xiao Wanru said in a low voice with slightly red eyes. It sounded like she was talking to herself, but it also sounded like a promise to Chu Luqian. Although it was just a soft sentence and disappeared in the air in an instant, it left an immortal mark in Chu Luqian's heart. Looking at the beautiful girl in front of him, Chu Luqian smiled with joy in his eyes, which were as gentle as water. With her accompanying him, he would not be lonely. Because of her, he should go up. If he could not protect her, it was useless no matter how good he was to her. Everything had originally been his, and now it could only be his. He would not allow anyone to covet his treasures. The night was peaceful in Prince Chen's mansion. Through the window, a pair of beautiful people could be seen lying side by side. The light gently shone on them, and a faint layer of dim yellow dyed their delicate and beautiful eyebrows and eyes, which looked like a painting. In Prince Yu's mansion, in Chu Liyue's study. Tell me, what's going on? Chu Liyue stared at the middle-aged man in front of him with a livid face. This was Duke Yong, Di Rufeng. He was sweating profusely and didn't dare to raise his head. Your Highness, this is really unexpected. D. Ruffin stammered. In the past, he was also a calm middle-aged man, but at this time, he was reprimanded to the point that his face turned pale. Usually, he was just an ordinary noble, and a declining noble. He looked very mediocre, and his son was even more hopeless. Almost no one was optimistic about Duke Yong's mansion, and no one took him seriously. But in fact, he had sought refuge with Prince Yu long ago. In other words, he was not Prince Yu. He had sought refuge with Prince Yu's biological mother, Concubine Da, and was a hidden chess piece secretly arranged by Concubine Da. His main role was not to help Prince Yu do anything in the imperial court, but to secretly cultivate some beautiful girls for Prince Yu, and to cultivate these beautiful girls from a young age. To cultivate them to look like a pretty girl from a humble family, they were not particularly charming girls from a brothel, but they were required to look like a girl from a good family. Even if they went in and out of someone's house as a servant girl, they had to look like a pretty girl from a humble family who had to be forced into such a predicament. Compared to the prostitutes from the brothels, these kinds of women were more easily accepted by the madams of the big families. Some madams would even specially give them face and send them to their husbands. They felt that they were easier to control. As long as their parents were captured, they would obediently enter the palm of their hands. For men, this kind of beautiful girls who had to be forced into a predicament were easier to be pitied. Although they were not as dignified and decent as the madams of big families, they also had the elegance of a pretty girl from a humble family, like the dew in the morning. It was easy to be attracted to them, especially for the officials who had been in the officialdom for a long time. Sometimes, they preferred a pure girl from a good family to be with them, without any scheming or other conflicts of interests. She was just an innocent girl without any conflicts of interests, who stayed by their side wholeheartedly, waiting for their love. And when necessary, these girls who looked like they came from a good family were more charming and attractive than the girls from a brothel. Duke Yong's mansion set up a few farms in the suburbs to help Prince Yu's mansion raise people. In order to prevent others from finding out the connection with Prince Yu's mansion from the transfer of money, Duke Yong's mansion handled all these things by themselves and kept all the things in their mansion. Duke Yong's mansion was still a declining noble mansion in the outside world and was not valued. But Duke Yong himself had no money, and there was almost no large amount of money in the declining mansion, so he turned his attention to Madame D's dowry shops. At that time, Madame D had left, and these dowry shops were managed by Countess Yong, so Countess Yong began to use these shops to make profits for her mansion. Then she offered money to invest in the cultivation of these girls. In order to make these girls perfect, a lot of money was naturally spent. Although Chu Luiyue sometimes sent some money to them in a roundabout way, he did not dare to do too much. Moreover, if he took too many roundabout ways, he would be afraid that others would find out. Duke Yong mostly saved himself. In this regard, Chu Luiyue secretly praised him again and again, but now this matter was exposed by Qin Yuru. How could Chu Luiyue not be angry? Your Highness, now we should think of a way to calm this matter down. Advisor Mr. Lu frowned and advised. How to deal with it now? My father will definitely get the news. Chu Luiyue was so angry that he paced several times in the study. Recently, everything was not going well for him, and now even Duke Yong's mansion was in trouble. Your daughter-in-law is ignorant. You should have dealt with her earlier. Why did you let her make such trouble now? Your Highness, after all, she is my mother's granddaughter. Xiao Ruffeng smiled bitterly. At this time, he also regretted it. If he had known it would be like this, he would not have been soft-hearted at that time and directly killed her. She is originally an indecent person, and she is the daughter-in-law of your mansion. No wonder your son doesn't want to go home. Marrying such a daughter-in-law is a waste of the family. Chu Luiyue said coldly, and then sat on the table behind the desk with a gloomy face. He ignored Xiao Ruffeng and turned to Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu, what do you think we should do now? If my father's people investigate carefully, they will definitely find me. Although Prince Yu's mansion and Duke Yong's mansion did not have any connection, and Duke Yong's mansion was almost self-sufficient, but if they really wanted to investigate, there was still a trace. Chu Luyue could not guarantee that the emperor would not find it. Your Highness, now we should indeed make the worst plan. Mr. Lu frowned and said slowly. This matter was indeed difficult to deal with. What plan? If those girls are found, Duke Yong will insist that they are trained by your Highness and sent to Prince Yu's mansion to serve you. They do this because Duke Yong's mansion wants to curry favor with you. Mr. Lu said. How can this? Xiao Rufeng was stunned and said anxiously. Chu Luyue waved his hand discontentedly and said, Don't speak, let Mr. Lu speak. Mr. Lu looked at Xiao Rufeng, who was so anxious that his eyes almost popped out, and said slowly, Your Highness, if the Emperor knows that your purpose of raising these girls is to send them to various mansions to inquire about information, the Emperor will definitely not spare you. The Emperor is in the prime of his life. If you have this idea, it will cause a big trouble, not to mention that the Empress and Prince Zhou have been eyeing you covetously. Chu Luyue became silent. He knew that Mr. Lu was reminding him that if at this time, he let his father know that he secretly did something and hid his ministers, he would definitely not be able to pass the test. In addition, if the Empress added fuel to the fire, he would really be finished. The matter was so urgent that he had to deal with it. Okay, I will do as you said. Chu Luyue nodded hard. This was also an action of cutting his own flesh. Although he was distressed about his plan, he could only do this at the moment. Your Highness, but Your Highness, so many years of painstaking efforts, and some of them have been sent out. Xiao Rufeng was soaked in cold sweat, and his back was wet with sweat. If he was asked to bear all the responsibility, he could not bear it. Originally, in order to show his loyalty to Prince Yu, he tried to solve the problem by himself, but now he regretted it. At that time, he would not directly bear all the responsibility for the future merit of attaining the throne. Now that something had happened, he was afraid that he could not let Prince Yu share the responsibility. Immediately cut off the connection with those who have been sent out. Just treat them as ordinary girls and they have nothing to do with you. Mr. Lu suggested. This proposal made Chu Luyue nod repeatedly. At this time, the relationship between them and him must not be exposed, let alone let them collect information at this time. In fact, there were already women who had married into the mansions of the ministers and become concubines. But, Your Highness, if the Emperor finds out that it is all about our mansion, the Emperor will not let me off easily. Xiao Rufeng begged. Duke Yong's mansion was just a declining mansion, and it could not bear the anger of the Emperor. In fact, it is not absolutely impossible. If Duke Yong can do the following things, it is still possible to bear the risk this time. Mr. Lu said slowly on the side. Chapter 9:16. Actually, you can ask your wife to take responsibility for this. Mr. Lu said meaningfully. This time, not only Duke Yong Xiao Rufeng looked at Mr. Lu expectantly, but also Chu Luyue, who asked, What do you mean? Your Highness, what I said just now is the worst plan. But now it has just been stirred up. If you ask your wife to go to the Yamen and claim that it is just a misunderstanding, the Emperor will not investigate too much. It is just a matter of the inner court caused by the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. The Emperor does not have so much energy to manage the affairs of the backyard. Dispute between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law? Chu Luyue repeated, and then his eyes lit up. He couldn't help clapping his hands and said, Wonderful, wonderful. As long as it was a dispute between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, it was the smallest thing. Even if it was a scandal, it was impossible for the Emperor to carefully investigate such a trivial dispute between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law in the backyard. But, who will take responsibility for this? Xiao Rufeng said bitterly. He already had a bad feeling. Of course, let your wife suffer some grievances. She should admit her mistake first and coax your wife. I heard that your child is not very good to your wife. Let your child accompany your wife to go to the Yamen and persuade her to come back. Let her go to the Yamen to withdraw the complaint. It is the best to end the trouble. Mr. Lu analyzed. But, such a reputation. Xiao Rufeng's voice became hoarse. Although he did not treat Countess Yong well, if this matter fell on Countess Yong, it would inevitably be related to him and affect the reputation of the entire Earl's mansion. And with such a reputation, Countess Yong could only meditate in the Buddha Hall if she was not divorced. It was not that he was reluctant to let Countess Yong meditate in the Buddha Hall. It was because most of the affairs of the raised girls were managed by Countess Yong and old Madam. If Countess Yong was not happy and made trouble, it would be a big deal. My wife knows that I'm raising a girl, and she's the one in charge. If I let her take the responsibility this time, I'm afraid it will cause more trouble. Xiao Rufeng braced himself and said. He had to say this. If that's the case, I might have to ask Uncle to do a little more. Mr. Lu thought for a while and said. What? Xiao Rufeng's face changed dramatically. After asking your wife to invite young Madam of Duke Yong back, your wife will fall ill, or even die. If this is the case, others will talk less about Duke Yong's mansion, and it will not arouse the Emperor's suspicion. Mr. Lu paused and said. Xiao Rufeng's hands trembled as he said, This is possible. Duke Yong, I will remember your kindness. Don't worry, I just made your wife sick. Nothing bad will happen to her. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely let your son become an official. This is my gratitude to your whole mansion. Chu Luyue stood up and bowed deeply to Xiao Rufeng. How could Xiao Rufeng dare to accept his greeting? He hurriedly turned away with an indescribably bitter and complicated expression on his face. I'll follow your orders. What else could he do now? He could only do as Prince Yu said. Otherwise, the whole mansion might not be able to bear the Emperor's anger. If he did this kind of thing for Prince Yu, he would actually be on Prince Yu's side. Before Prince Yu succeeded, his side would be the disaster of extermination. Compared with a wife, the disaster of extermination was as heavy as Mount Tai, the night was like water. Chu Luchen got up from the darkness, looked at the petite girl in his arms, and then walked out quietly. He put on the outer robe and walked outside. Xiao Xuanzi had been waiting outside. How is it? Chu Luchen stood in the yard with his hands clasped behind his back and asked coldly. It's ready. Don't worry. Xiao Xuanzi whispered. What about Chu Liuzhou? Chu Liuchen's eyes were cold. I've disclosed the matter. Prince Zhou hasn't slept yet, nor has Prince Yu. Duke Yong has entered Prince Yu's mansion and hasn't come out yet. Xiao Xuanzi said. Chu Luchen raised his head. Under the moonlight, his handsome face looked a little cold and fierce. At the moment, he was more like an elegant Azura king, looking down at the world with coldness. Everything had been arranged when Xiao Wanru told him that Chu Luyue was behind Fanglan embroidery shop. He was just waiting for the right opportunity to disclose the matter. Chu Luyue would definitely avoid trouble, but it was difficult for him to adapt to it. Moreover, Chu Liuzhou was not weak. He had also been watching Chu Luyue. When Xiao Wanru woke up, Chu Luchen was not beside her. She guessed that he had gone to practice martial arts. Only after marrying into Prince Chen's mansion did she know that Chu Liuchen's current body looked a little weak, like a sick and weak young master, but in fact, his health was not bad. In particular, he had been practicing martial arts since he was a child. Although there were interruptions because of his illness, he had been practicing martial arts for so many years. Moreover, he was good at martial arts. This reminded Xiao Wanru of a long time ago. At that time, Chu Luchen climbed over the wall to find her. Hearing Xiao Wanru's voice, Yu Jie and Chu Lu immediately came in to serve her. Where is the prince? Xiao Wanru sat in front of the dressing table and asked. It was getting late outside, and there were no elders in Prince Chen's mansion. Xiao Wanru felt embarrassed. After not having to pay respects to the prince, she went to bed very late now, especially after they talked for a long time yesterday. The prince has already had breakfast. Let the princess enjoy it herself. He went to the front yard to deal with the affairs. Yu Jie replied with a smile. Before they entered Prince Chen's mansion, Yu Jie and Chu Lu were still a little worried. But now, all their worries were gone. Prince really cared about his master. His Highness only had eyes for the princess and no other women. Moreover, the servants around Prince were all eunuchs, so no young woman could get close to him. Thinking of this, Yujie suddenly remembered something and said, "Miss, just now the supervisor came to ask how to deal with the 2 palace maids in the palace." The palace maids in the palace? Xiao Wanru was stunned for a moment and did not respond. She looked confused, which was completely different from her shrewdness and strength in the past. She really looked like a little girl, and the 2 maids could not help laughing. "The princess, they are the 2 who were sent from the palace to teach the prince," Chu Lu explained with a red face. Her words were vague. Xiao Wanru blinked her long eyelashes twice and suddenly understood something. Her pink face could not help blushing. "What did the prince say?" "The prince said that it was all up to you. If you don't like them, you can throw them out directly," Yujie said with a smile. How could she like this kind of girl? Xiao Wanru secretly rolled her eyes. Any legal wife who had just married into the mansion would not like a girl who taught her husband how to behave. Fortunately, Chu Luqian did not let them get close to him. Since the Empress sent them here, he had casually thrown them in a remote yard. However, at present, it was indeed a little difficult to deal with. "Your Highness, I heard that these 2 palace maids can enter Prince Chen's mansion because they have powerful backgrounds. They are different from the palace maids given by the Empress in the past. In the past, those palace maids were either thrown out directly or even killed," Yujie said in a low voice. Before Xiao Wanru got up, she deliberately went to inquire about the 2 palace maids. She had heard that none of the palace maids in the palace lived in Prince Chen's mansion. What was the background of these 2 maids? What do you mean? Xiao Wanru also became curious. If they were really ordinary people, these 2 palace maids really could not stay in Prince Chen's mansion. Based on her understanding of Chu Luqian, he was not a person who could be persuaded. If he wanted to throw them out, he would throw them out. If they made him unhappy and those women dared to covet him, they would even have to die in Prince Chen's mansion. With such a notorious reputation, none of the palace maids dared to come to Prince Chen's mansion. "Your Highness, I have inquired about them. One of the 2 palace maids was sent here by the Empress Dowager, and the other was chosen by the Empress. The one sent by the Empress Dowager seems to have something to do with Nanny Wei, who works for the Empress Dowager. It seems that she is a niece of Nanny Wei's maiden family. Although she lives far away from Nanny Wei, she is related to Nanny Wei, and the Empress Dowager used to like her very much. The palace maid sent by the Empress also has something to do with the Empress. It seems that she is a relative of the Empress Dowager's maiden family. Her ancestor was an official. Later, something happened to her, so she became a slave. The Empress Dowager took pity on her cleverness and specially let her stay in the palace. Now, she is also very popular in front of the Empress." Xiao Wanru's eyes darkened. Therefore, she couldn't treat them as she used to because they both had powerful backgrounds. "They want to see me." Her watery eyes were slightly cold, and she already had an idea in her heart. No one had mentioned this matter in the past few days. It could be seen that the 2 of them had behaved themselves before, but now they couldn't behave themselves anymore. According to the supervisor, it seems to be what they mean. Yujie was a little angry. The more unusual the identities of the 2 of them were, the more difficult it was to deal with this matter. Thinking that her miss had just entered the mansion and become a prince's mansion, Yujie felt angry for Xiao Wanru. No matter what relationship they had, they were just 2 palace maids. Could they take this opportunity to climb over the princess's head? Just let them stay here. I have no time to deal with them now. Xiao Wanru waved her hand lazily and said. They really thought that they were important people just because they wanted to see them. She didn't care what the identities of the 2 of them were before. Since they had entered Prince Chen's mansion, they had to abide by the rules of Prince Chen's mansion. Of course, it would be better if they were anxious. Subconsciously, she knew that the 2 palace maids were not simple. They were inextricably linked to the Empress Dowager and the Empress. If they were not special, they would not be sent here. Then what were they after? Was it because of Chu Luchen? Knowing that Chu Luchen would not like to see them, so what if the Empress Dowager and the Empress were behind them? Then, what was the purpose of them entering the mansion? Was it to sow discord between the Empress Dowager and Chu Luchen? Or was it to sow discord between her and Chu Luchen? Or were there other purposes? At present, she was not clear about it, so she could only deal with it by remaining unchanged. She wanted to see whether the two palace maids, who had fallen into Prince Chen's mansion, were anxious or not. Chapter 9:17. The matter of Duke Yong's mansion eventually reached the imperial court. Many censors complained that Duke Yong, Xiao Rufeng, did not manage his family strictly. They said that Countess Yong was not kind and coveted the dowry of her sister-in-law and daughter-in-law for so many years. If the madam of an aristocratic family behaved like this, it would really disgrace the whole aristocratic family. Some people advocated that Duke Yong should divorce his wife. Some people said that Countess Yong was unvirtuous and should be sent to the temple directly, so that she could pray for her family in the temple for the rest of her life. Some people even said that Countess Yong had caused her daughter-in-law's miscarriage in order to occupy the shops of her daughter-in-law. Moreover, she added drugs to her daughter-in-law's medicine to prevent her from having children. Her heart was so vicious that it made people's hair stand on end. The words and the memorials made Xiao Rufeng kneel in the main hall. He trembled all over and was speechless. The emperor was so angry that he threw all the memorials to Xiao Rufeng, and then ordered everyone to stop talking about this matter and focus on business. With the emperor's words, this matter was temporarily stopped. The officials returned to their positions and proposed their own political affairs related to the imperial court. Chu Luchen sat in the wide chair, holding his head with his elbow, squinting at the scene in front of him with a lazy look. The chair had always been placed like this, even though he was in good health now. Chu Luyue stood in his place with a calm look, and Chu Liuzhou stood behind him with a calm look. It was hard to believe that they both wished each other dead just by looking at their faces. One was secretly flustered, and the other was secretly complacent. Chu Qing looked excited. Although he did not know the specific matter, he faintly felt that it would not be simple. The officials submitted the memorials to the emperor one by one, and the emperor handled the affairs with a dignified look. Everyone seemed to not see Duke Yong, Di Rufeng, and turned a blind eye to him kneeling in the main hall. This kind of turning a blind eye made Di Rufeng panic. He took a deep breath, thinking of what Prince Yu said yesterday and what his wife and son said before they went out today. They promised to coax Qin Yuru back, and no matter what conditions Qin Yuru put forward, they would agree to her, and this matter would not be blown up. He didn't know what was going on outside. If this matter ended here, it would be fine. Di Rufeng felt uneasy and his back was soaked with cold sweat. The emperor's silent attitude made him unable to concentrate and he even wanted to faint in front of the hall. When the meeting was finally over, the emperor took the princes to the imperial study room. Di Rufeng was dragged into the study room by a eunuch. In the imperial study, the eunuch loosened his grip and Di Rufeng knelt on the ground, trembling. This was the crucial moment. No matter what the outcome would be, it was like a blind man touching an elephant. His heart was completely suspended in the air. The longer he waited, the greater his endurance would be. When they entered the imperial study, a guard hurriedly presented a memorial to the emperor. Durong took it and handed it to the emperor respectfully. The emperor read it with a cold face. After reading it, he sneered, "Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law fight? Duke Yong's mansion is really lively. The fight between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is so anxious that they even went to my yamen. Your Majesty. I'm not strict enough." Di Rufeng felt that he was alive again. His body shook and he almost fell to the ground. However, he was ecstatic in his heart. The emperor's bodyguard gave him the information of the investigation, which was obviously beneficial to him and also in the direction he wanted. Not strict enough. Duke Yong's mansion is not strict enough. Now it belongs to your family. Chu Liuzhou sneered and said. Second brother, this is the family affair of Duke Yong's mansion. In fact, Duke Yong is also unwilling to do it. As a man, it is inevitable that his wife is not virtuous and his son is not filial. Chu Liuyue's words seemed to be much more tolerant. Chu Luqian squinted his eyes and sat on a chair on one side. His long eyelashes fluttered slightly, and it was hard to tell whether he was asleep or awake. Big brother, you are really kind. In the past, it is rare for you to protect your subjects like this. You always follow father's order. Chu Liuzhou sneered. Second brother, I naturally have to follow father's order. But this matter is really... Chu Liyue shook his head calmly, as if he didn't know how to describe it. He didn't really want to fight with Chu Liuzhou. Compared with Chu Liuzhou, he looked much more peaceful. Father, I have something to report to the emperor. Chu Liuzhou suddenly fell into a disadvantage and immediately became angry out of shame. He took a step forward and said. What's the matter? The emperor said coldly. Father, I report to the emperor that there is another reason for the affair in Duke Yong's mansion. Chu Liuzhou said. Di Rufen's body shook and he almost fell down. He clenched his teeth hard to calm himself down. Even if Prince Zhou was omnipotent, he couldn't really hide anything. Those girls were hiding in the farm outside the city and usually didn't show themselves. This time, he didn't panic and didn't rush to investigate this matter. Prince Yu repeatedly warned him not to panic. Father, this is the news I got yesterday. Please check it. Chu Liuzhou presented a memorial in his hand. Durong took it and handed it to the emperor. The emperor was as calm as water. After reading it, his face was cold. Then he suddenly picked up the memorial at hand and smashed it on Chu Liyue's head. Chu Liyue was startled, but he didn't dare to avoid it. He just took it and it happened to hit the bridge of his nose. It was painful and sour, and tears immediately came out of the corners of his eyes. At this time, he didn't have time to wipe away his tears. He hurriedly knelt down and said, Father. You are good. You really have a long arm. The emperor was so angry that he stretched out his hand and scolded. Father, I don't dare. Chu Liyue didn't know what went wrong, so he hurriedly lowered his head and said. He couldn't help but feel a little flustered. He didn't know what Chu Liuzhou showed his father and made him angry with him. He slightly raised his hand to wipe away the sour tears from the corners of his eyes. He calmed himself down and looked blank, as if he really didn't know why the emperor reprimanded him. You don't dare. Why don't you dare? It's really good. I raised you up one by one. When you are grown up, you also have a big heart. The emperor was so angry that he pointed at Chu Liyue and Chu Liuzhou. Father. Chu Liuzhou couldn't stand it anymore and knelt down. Chu Luqian still looked as if he had nothing to do with this matter. He just raised his eyes to look at the two brothers, and then continued to close his eyes to rest. If other princes dared to be so disrespectful, the emperor would be furious. But it was Chu Luqian. When the emperor glanced at him, he did not blame him at all. Instead, he suddenly remembered that he would ask the imperial physician to feel his pulse later. Prince Chen, if you are tired, you can go back first. The emperor said. Uncle, I'm not tired. I have nothing to do. Just listen to it. Chu Luqian opened his eyes, sat up a little, and said gently. Chu Liyue and Chu Liuzhou were so angry that they almost died. Chu Liuqian's indifferent attitude could be ignored, but now he even said that he wanted to watch them. He was a dignified prince, not some entertainer. How could others treat him with such disrespect? But it was Chu Luqian, so they had to swallow it even if they couldn't. Sure enough, after hearing Chu Liuqian's words, the emperor nodded and no longer paid attention to him. He didn't even blame him for his disrespectful attitude. Look at what this is. The emperor pointed at the memorial on the ground and said to Chu Liyue angrily. Chu Liyue hurriedly picked up the memorial on the ground and read it 10 lines at a glance. When he finished, his face changed greatly. He was angry and sad. He looked up at Chu Liuzhou with deep sadness in his eyes and said, "Second brother, why do you think it has something to do with me?" How could I, isn't it you?" the emperor asked coldly. "Father, I really don't know. How could I?" Chu Liyue kowtowed to the emperor and then raised his head, looking extremely sad. Di Rufeng's lips trembled in panic. He looked at Chu Liyue almost desperately. He didn't see the memorial, so he didn't know what was written on it. If the emperor really knew all the inside story, not to mention Prince Yu, all the members of his family would be in trouble. The removal of the title of nobility was already very generous, and they might even lose their lives. "You don't know?" the emperor said coldly and pointed at Di Rufeng. "I don't know that you have something to do with him. What do you mean by asking your disciples to contact him again and again? Could it be that he can give you money?" "Father, I really don't know that this person has more contact with the steward of Duke Yong's mansion. Although he is the steward of my mansion, he is just a steward of the outer court. He used to be a scholar who failed to pass the imperial examination. Because he was so poor that he didn't even have money to return to his hometown. I met him and felt that he had some talent, so I let him be a steward of the outer court." Chu Liuzhou's memorial was about this steward Ji. It was said that he was sent by Chu Liyue to form gangs everywhere, and there were some witnesses who saw him. His purpose should be to spy on the masters of the mansions. This steward surnamed Ji not only had a good relationship with Duke Yong, but also had a good relationship with a steward of Chu Liuzhou's mansion. Of course, in addition to these two mansions, he even had a relationship with Marquis Xing's mansion. This steward surnamed Ji could be said to have a wide range of contacts. "Father, I didn't know it at first. After the thing happened in Duke Yong's mansion, the steward of my mansion came to me and said that this steward Ji in my elder brother's mansion had given him some money and was on good terms with him, but he didn't say what he wanted to do with him. I also felt it was strange, so I sent someone to investigate it. I didn't expect that this steward Ji had also given money to Duke Yong, and it was not only one money, but also a large amount of money." Chu Liuzhou said angrily. Anyone who was plotted against by a brother he had always trusted would have such an expression. The problem was that he and Chu Liyue did not always trust each other. Even if they looked like brothers on the surface, they secretly wanted to kill each other. The so-called betrayal was actually nothing. "Father, I really don't know about it." Chu Liyue argued with grievance. "Father, I don't think a small steward can get so much money, and he has given more than one money." Chu Liuzhou said angrily, "If my elder brother has something to ask, he can directly ask my younger brother. There is no need to secretly pay someone to spy on my younger brother. No wonder my elder brother has already known what happened in my mansion before others know it." Chapter 9:18. "Father, I'm really wronged. I didn't buy people's hearts. I really don't know where Steward Ji got the money. If you don't believe me, you can find Steward Ji. I'm willing to confront him face to face." Chu Liyue cried out his grievance, and his words were very tough. The emperor looked at his two sons suspiciously. One of them also had factual evidence. The steward of Prince Zhou's mansion was a witness. But this witness was from Prince Zhou's mansion, so the effect of this witness was greatly reduced. As for the contact between the surnamed Ji and Duke Yong's mansion, Chu Liuzhou had the material evidence. The two transfers were made with silver notes. Although they happened a long time ago, the supervisor of the bank at that time paid special attention to it because of the large amount. It was the steward of Prince Yu's mansion who deposited the money, but it was a person from Duke Yong's mansion who withdrew the money. It should not be so obvious where such a large amount of silver notes was collected, but because the accountant of the bank was a smart person with an eidetic memory, he deliberately looked at it a few more times. After seeing these two people again, he remembered that these two people belonged to different aristocratic families. One was from Prince Yu's mansion, and the other was from Duke Yong's mansion. Moreover, it was said that Prince Yu's mansion and Duke Yong's mansion had no dealings. This was also the news that Chu Liuzhou found out. Since he said so and there was a witness and material evidence, it must be true. Why did you send money to Duke Yong's mansion? The emperor said harshly. How could he not know the intrigue between his sons? Father, I'm really wronged. I really don't know anything. How could Chu Luiyue admit it? At this time, he gritted his teeth and refused to admit it. Although he was very surprised that Chu Liuzhou found out about this steward Ji, he was not afraid of it. If there was any trouble, this steward Ji would definitely die to testify against him. Go and bring him here. The emperor ordered the guard. The guard acknowledged the order and retreated. Not long after, he came back with a piece of news. When he went to look for steward Ji, he was found hanged in his room. Father, I'm really wronged. If my second brother didn't mention it, I wouldn't even remember such a person. I wouldn't have given such a large sum of money to such an unknown person, and I wouldn't have let him go out and make friends with other officials. Please believe me, father. Chu Luiyue said. He didn't mean that he was wronged, but accused Chu Liuzhou of deliberately framing him. Otherwise, how could Chu Liuzhou be so clear about something that he didn't know? Chu Liuzhou was furious and said, Father, it's obviously my eldest brother's idea. Now the evidence is conclusive. Please make a fair decision. It's said that it's Steward Ji's fault, but now Steward Ji is dead. Second brother, why do you insist on blaming me? I really don't know how to make you unhappy. Chu Luiyue looked miserable and seemed to be grieved. Now it has come to this, but you still argue. Second brother, how could I argue? Of your witnesses, one is a servant in your mansion, and the other is a servant in my mansion, but he is dead. A dead man can't speak, so you can say whatever you want. I believe that father will investigate this matter thoroughly and will not accuse me unjustly. Eldest brother, it's really a good plan. If Steward Ji is dead, there's no evidence, right? Second brother, I really didn't do anything. Is it really okay for you to say that about me? The two of them came and went, and they were arguing. One of them made it clear that Chu Luiyue conspired against the law, secretly made friends with officials, and even had financial dealings with them. The other suggested that Chu Liuzhou was the mastermind behind the scenes and everything was driven by him. He was obviously the most innocent. The more the emperor listened, the angrier he became. He picked up the pen at hand and smashed it hard on the two of them. Although the pen was not heavy, the black ink on the pen splashed on their faces and bodies, and a few black lines were immediately drawn on their handsome faces. But the two of them didn't have time to wipe it off. They knelt on the ground one by one and didn't dare to move. Duke Yong, tell me where your money comes from. Why did they give you money? Since they gave you money, it must be useful. The emperor ignored his two sons and his eyes fell on Duke Yong. He couldn't explain the words of his two sons for a while, but Di Ruffeng was involved in it. He slammed his hand on the desk and said, Is your Duke Yong's mansion so short of money? Not only did you get money from your sister-in-law and daughter-in-law, but you also took money from the prince's mansion. What on earth do you want? Di Ruffeng didn't expect that he was involved in this matter again. It was too unexpected. It was not the matter that he secretly entered Prince Yu's mansion to discuss yesterday. It was his business that he contacted Steward Ji of Prince Yu's mansion, and he did take the money that Prince Yu gave him in private. The amount of money was really not small. He stole a glance at Chu Luiyue, but found that Chu Luiyue lowered his head as if he didn't see him. He was anxious and annoyed. Di Ruffeng, do you still have to look at Prince Yu before you speak? The emperor's voice was a little colder. Duke Yong, if you have something to say, just tell father the truth. I'm upright, and I'm not afraid of father's investigation. Chu Luiyue said loudly. Di Ruffeng was also forced to do nothing. His forehead was sweating as big as soybeans. He gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and said again, Your Majesty, Steward Ji of Prince Yu's mansion did give me some money. What did he ask you to do? The emperor was as calm as water. He didn't say what he wanted me to do. He just said that Prince Yu appreciated me. He heard that the money in my mansion was not circulating well, so he specially sent some money to me. At that time, I was indeed not circulating well, and Prince Yu didn't mention anything, so I accepted the money. Di Ruffing said with a bitter face. Did Prince Yu tell you in person? The emperor continued to ask. How could I meet Prince Yu? It's Steward Ji who told me. He also gave me the money. He said that he was the steward of Prince Yu's mansion. I also specially saw him enter Prince Yu's mansion. Later, I also asked people in Prince Yu's mansion, and they all said that he was the steward of Prince Yu's mansion. Di Ruffing lowered his head and said. He had to say so. The thing about Steward Ji had been verified. If he didn't say so, he wouldn't be able to save his life. At the moment, he could only beg for his life in danger in order to show his innocence. You only know that he is the steward of Prince Yu's mansion. How dare you accept the money sent by others? The emperor sneered. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, I can't do anything. Since Prince Yu didn't ask me to do anything, I will take it that Prince Yu pitied my predicament. My son is disappointing. Not to mention that he usually indulges in debauchery, he also has some debts outside. When Steward Ji sent the money over, it was when I needed it the most. Then it will be a scandal in my mansion. Di Ruffin covered his face and cried bitterly. I only have one younger sister, and I have always loved her. If I hadn't been in such a difficult situation, how could I have embezzled my younger sister's dowry? I'm really useless. I'm useless. The more Di Ruffing said, the more agitated he became. He hammered his chest hard and looked regretful. There were many cases in which a son was not good at living up to expectations and ruined the whole family. The heir of Duke Yong was not a person who made progress. The emperor had long known that he was a useless playboy who was not a good man. He was not a good man. But now Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou were involved, and it was difficult for the emperor to judge whether it was true or not. He looked at Di Ruffing, who was crying with unclear eyes. Father, I really didn't send money to Duke Yong. My mansion is not very rich. Although my mother gave me some money in private, it was not enough for me to send a large amount of money. If you don't believe me, you can check the account of my mansion and see how much money I have. Chu Luiyue cried out loudly again. Of course, the money he sent was not for the business of Prince Yu's mansion, but for other places to make money. And the mention of concubine De in his words naturally reminded people of the empress. Although concubine De was one of the 4 concubines and was now the first person in the harem after the empress, she was still inferior to the empress and was restricted by the empress. Of course, she couldn't give more things to her son than the empress, and she couldn't give things more conveniently than the empress. From this point of view, the person behind Butler Ji was most likely to be Chu Liuzhou. After all, Chu Liuzhou had the support of the empress, so he must be richer than Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue, don't push the blame to me when you are in trouble. Chu Liuzhou was furious, widened his eyes and said with hatred. All the new and old hatred rushed up at once, including the open and secret competition between them and the fight in Marquis Xing's mansion last time. At that time, although they felt it was strange afterwards, they also felt that they had vented their hatred. At least they had a solid fight. Second brother, this is the imperial study. You can't be presumptuous. Compared with Chu Liuzhou's impulsiveness, Chu Luiyue was much calmer and still had the mood to remind Chu Liuzhou at this time. Father, Chu Liuyue's son is ambitious. It is obvious that he secretly colludes with the courtiers, but he just finds these reasons to talk nonsense. At least, since Butler Ji is his man and he has inquired about me with my men, he must be his confidant. Chu Liuzhou suppressed his anger and turned to the emperor and said. Father, I think someone must want to hurt me. Please help me redress the grievances. Chu Luiyue also said to the emperor. The 2 sons spoke one after another, and neither of them was willing to give in. The blue veins on the emperor's forehead bulged fiercely. Come on, take them out of the hall and let them kneel. When they think it through, come in and answer me. A eunuch came to pull them, so they had to stand up. After looking at each other fiercely, they walked out together. When they walked out of the imperial study, they knelt down on both sides of the hall. Duke Yong, if you don't tell the truth, I don't know what will happen to my eldest brother and second brother, but you will definitely end up like this. In the study, Chu Luqian said with his gentle eyes falling on Di Rufeng with an elegant smile. Chapter 9:19. Remember, in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say net there was no pop-up window for free reading. In Di Rufeng's eyes, such a smile was like a sharp cold blade, which made him panic. Prince Yu, the only person who could support him, was not here. Duke Yong, do you think that someone will come to save you, so you still want to struggle? Chu Luqian said slowly with a calm look. He was not anxious at all. I don't know what you are talking about, Your Highness. Di Rufeng clenched his teeth. He didn't believe that Prince Chen could make him talk if he didn't tell the truth. So you admit that your son is not good enough, your wife is not good enough, and you dare to accept other people's property at will. Do you have the intention to violate the law? Chu Luqian said, took out a handkerchief to wipe his slender fingers, raised his head casually, and said without a trace of anger. Your Highness, uncle, since Duke Yong has admitted his crime, let's punish him like this. Chu Luqian looked up at the emperor and said with a smile. His peaceful and handsome smile was very soothing. The emperor, who was originally angry, slowly calmed down at this time. He thought for a while and nodded. Your Highness, I didn't say anything. Your Highness, I didn't admit my crime. May I know why I am guilty? Di Rufeng panicked and said hurriedly. Duke Yong, I have given you a chance to explain just now. Don't blame anyone else. Chu Luqian still smiled very gently, but in Di Rufeng's eyes, this smile was cold and ghostly. Draft a decree to remove Duke Yong's title as the heir of Duke Yong and change it to a hereditary title. This is the end. The emperor said expressionlessly. Your Highness. Duke Yong's face changed dramatically, his body shook, and he almost fainted. For the children of aristocratic families, a title was fought for by their ancestors, not to mention this hereditary title was even more precious. Now Di Yan's title was removed, which meant that the title of Duke Yong was gone. From now on, except for Di Rufeng, his descendants would be ordinary civilians after his death. If he wanted to be successful, he had to take the imperial examination again. Based on Di Yan's looks, it was impossible for him to excel in the imperial exam. Since it's your son's fault and everything was caused by your son, then punish your son. I only punished your son because I took into account that you and your wife were affected by your son. Hurry up and thank me. Chu Luqian said slowly. Thank you, Your Majesty. Di Rufeng kowtowed with tears in his eyes. Stand down. The emperor waved his hand and said angrily. This matter involved his two sons, who he had high hopes for, and the cause was Di Rufeng. It was no wonder that the emperor was in a good mood. Yes. Di Rufeng answered and retreated. He staggered to the door and was bathed in the bright sunlight. Suddenly, he felt dizzy. The two princes kneeling outside seemed to be spinning with him. Duke Yong. The little eunuch outside the door saw that he was in a bad situation and hurriedly reached out to help him. Di Rufeng stood still and held the little eunuch's hand. He closed his eyes and then slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were slightly red. The title passed down by his ancestors was lost in his generation. How could he face his ancestors in the future? At this moment, Ning Yuan lost his title and directly passed it to his son. He didn't want his son to bear this responsibility. He thought that his son was just a useless son of an aristocratic family. Even if the emperor was angry, he couldn't do anything to him. Unexpectedly, the emperor cut off the title of Duke Yong. The foundation of Duke Yong's mansion. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have done it. At that time, he would have behaved himself and become a declining duke. At least, he would have a title and dignity. Duke Yong, are you all right? The little eunuch's voice sounded far and near. He finally heard it clearly. Shaking his shoulders slightly, Di Rufeng shook off the little eunuch who was supporting him and staggered into the palace. He couldn't go out like this. He had to find Zhao Di and ask her to plead to the emperor. In any case, he couldn't get rid of the title of Duke Yong. Duke Yong? When passing by the two princes, Chu Luiyue called him in a low voice. However, at this time, his mind was full of the title and he turned a blind eye to his former master. Elder brother, it seems that Duke Yong has been severely punished by my father. Now he can't help you anymore. Chu Liuzhou sneered. Second brother, Duke Yong may have been deceived by someone. I don't know who deliberately ruined my reputation and also involved Duke Yong's mansion. Chu Luiyue restrained his mind, for fear that Chu Luiyue would make more trouble in the future. He wasn't afraid that Chu Liuzhou would find out something, but he was afraid that Chu Liuzhou would say something nonsense again. He slowly lowered his eyes and clenched his hands under his sleeves. Could it be possible that he really had Chu Liuzhou's men? Otherwise, how could he know so clearly? It seemed that after returning to the mansion, he needed to clean up the mansion. He had thought that those who were offended had all been dealt with, but there were still more. The imperial study became quiet. The emperor frowned and looked gloomy. Chu Luqian stood up and said goodbye to the emperor. Don't go first. Analyze this matter for me. The emperor reached out to stop him. Uncle, it's not good for me to intervene in this matter. Chu Luqian smiled helplessly. I believe in you. The emperor waved his hand and interrupted him. It's possible that both of them intervened in this matter. Now it's really a disgrace to the royal family. Uncle, do you mean to make it a small matter? Chu Luqian had already expected this result and asked casually. Seeing that his nephew was not interested in anything, the emperor sighed in his heart. He really trusted Chu Luqian, but he couldn't let Chu Luqian be tired because Chu Luqian was not in good health before. Now the imperial physician said that Chu Luqian was much better, so he asked Chu Luqian a few more questions. What will happen if we continue to investigate this matter? The emperor said seriously. Uncle, it's really hard to say. Chu Luqian said helplessly, with an indescribable smile on his pale face. The emperor understood what he meant. In fact, it was also his previous scruples. He hadn't decided who to appoint as the crown prince of the East Palace. Before anything was decided, Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou were equally suitable, and they were both one of the successors to the throne in his mind. There were not many princes who could be the crown prince. Including Chu Luqian, there were only 4 princes who could be the crown prince, and each of them was precious. If it was not a matter of brothers killing each other, he wouldn't kill them easily. The current matter was specious, and both of them might be involved in it. The clearer it was investigated, the more difficult it would be to deal with it in the future. In fact, there was nothing serious at the moment, and Duke Yong, who was involved in it, was punished because of the trouble outside. He could push the blame to the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in his mansion, and the royal family couldn't be involved. Say it, and I will pardon you. Uncle, let's just let it go, especially outside the palace. We can't let people talk about it. Because of the matter of the first miss of Marquis Xing's mansion and what happened at the wedding banquet, the eldest brother and the second brother have had a lot of disputes. Chu Luqian said implicitly. Originally, it was just an open and secret fight, but now everyone knew that the two princes were not on good terms. The emperor nodded repeatedly. At the same time, he also thought of Xiao Jing, Marquis Xing, and felt unhappy. Marquis Xing's mansion was getting worse with each generation. The old Duke Xing and the former heir of Duke Xing were so heroic, but now they fell into such a situation. Of course, his daughter was not a good person either. As for the matter outside, push the blame to heir of Duke Yong. As Duke Yong said, the reason why the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law fought for money in the mansion was that Di Yan didn't live up to expectations. He deserved the title of heir of Duke Yong. After all, he had occupied the dowry for so long. How could a good son of an aristocratic family do such a thing? Chu Luqian analyzed lazily. The emperor nodded and thought it was very reasonable. As for the eldest brother and the second brother, it depends on uncle. After all, they are the grandsons of imperial grandmother. If uncle gives them a heavy punishment, imperial grandmother will also be distressed. Chu Liuchen's words seemed to indicate that he wanted to punish them, but he also asked the emperor not to punish them too heavily. This was in line with the emperor's intention. The emperor wouldn't have any reaction to punishing Duke Yong, but now the two were both his sons, and they might be the future crown prince of the Eastern Palace. If I don't teach these two evildoers a good lesson, they will really think that I can't do anything to them. The emperor said angrily, and he was really angry in his heart. He had thought that his eldest son was steady, but now it seemed that he was not as good as his third son. Moreover, his third son didn't know how to form cliques, which made the emperor rest assured and felt that he was considerate. Uncle, imperial grandmother will be distressed. Chu Liuchen said again. I know. Now go to accompany your imperial grandmother. Don't tell your imperial grandmother about these two evildoers. The emperor waved his hand and said. When he heard that the Empress Dowager would be worried about them, he did think that he couldn't punish them too severely. But after Chu Liuchen said this, the emperor had a feeling that a loving mother would spoil her children. Especially for those who were one generation apart, they would be more distressed for their grandsons. Did these two evildoers have such an idea? Thinking of this, the emperor immediately became furious. He didn't believe that he couldn't deal with these two evildoers. Seeing that the emperor had made up his mind, Chu Liuchen said goodbye to the emperor. Eunuch Durong walked Chu Liuchen to the door. When he was about to leave, he suddenly saw Xiao Xuanzi running over in a hurry. Your Highness, please go back to the mansion. The imperial physician is already waiting in the mansion to give you acupuncture. Okay, I'll go right away. Chu Liuchen nodded lazily, and then said to Durong with a smile, Eunuch Durong, please find someone to tell imperial grandmother. I'll go back to the mansion now and come to accompany imperial grandmother when I'm done with acupuncture. Okay, I'll send someone to inform the Empress Dowager right away. Eunuch Durong promised and said with a smile. Chu Liuchen cupped his hands to him, and then left with Xiao Xuanzi. When he came to Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou, he didn't even look at them and walked past them without stopping. Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou knelt there and didn't dare to be angry with Chu Liuchen. They knew Chu Liuchen's temper very well. He was indifferent and aloof. It would be strange if he stopped to greet them. Chapter 920. A complete copy. Update the latest chapter on the Crown Princess's medical skills as soon as possible. The imperial physician in the palace had indeed been waiting in Prince Chen's mansion for a long time. When the imperial physician came here, he took the shortcut from the palace to Prince Chen's mansion. When Chu Liuchen came back, he also took this shortcut. After feeling Chu Liuchen's pulse, the imperial physician took out a set of needles to perform acupuncture on Chu Liuchen as usual. Xiao Wanru accompanied Chu Liuchen, watched the imperial physician insert the needles with a serious look, and then slowly lifted the needles. The room was very quiet except for the sound of the needle being inserted into the needle sheath. Xiao Wanru held Chu Liuchen's hand tightly with one hand and focused all her attention on the imperial physician. With the appearance of Princess Chen, the imperial physician also felt a lot of pressure. He always felt that Princess Chen paid too much attention to him. Because of the heavy atmosphere, time passed much slower than usual. After a set of acupuncture, the imperial physician's forehead was covered with beads of sweat. It could be seen that he was really in a hurry because of Xiao Wanru's stare. When the last needle was inserted, the imperial physician wiped his forehead with a handkerchief and said to Chu Liuchen with a wry smile, Your Highness, you are in good health now. There is nothing wrong with you. Do you still need acupuncture? Xiao Wanru restrained her expression and asked. It's best to use it. His Highness's body has a long history. The imperial physician put the handkerchief into his bosom and said. Can't it be cured? Xiao Wanru continued to ask. Her eyes were like flowing water, deep and serene. Actually, Your Highness's current condition is already considered good. However, because the fetal poison has been around for so many years, even though it has been cured, you still have to prioritize protection. The imperial physician's expression became serious as he replied calmly. These words actually made a lot of sense. Chu Liuchen's health was not something that could be healed overnight. It was true that he needed to recuperate slowly. Even though he had recovered now, he had to be more cautious than ordinary people. Imperial physician, do you think your highness still needs to take medicine to consolidate his health? Xiao Wanru was very concerned about Chu Liuchen's health and asked again. There is no need for that. Besides, we have Dr. Zhu in our mansion, so there is no need for other people to prescribe prescriptions, lest it conflicts with the prescriptions prescribed by Dr. Zhu. Of course, if you have to prescribe prescriptions, you'd better refer to the previous prescriptions. The imperial physician said kindly. Then he bowed to Xiao Wanru and Chu Liuchen, who got up and said, Your Highness, Prince, Your Highness, I will go back first. Chu Liuchen waved his hand lightly and the imperial physician left. Chu Liuchen asked and the imperial to leave. Chu Princess, Prince Chu Prince. Chu Liuchen stretched out his wrist and put it in Xiao Wanru's hand. He smiled and motioned for her to feel his pulse with interest. Xiao Wanru was really worried about Chu Liuchen's health. The imperial physician's words could be said to be perfect. She believed that she could feel his pulse, especially Chu Liuchen, who had just used acupuncture. Chu of Chu, Chu as. Chu Dr. Xiao Chu had before, and his pulse. J Chu of Prince. Xiao A, felt. Xiao Prince's Xiao. Chu. She was confused. Is there any problem? Chu Liuchen asked Xiao Wanru to sit on the edge of the bed. He waved his wide sleeves, looking as free and easy as running water. Your Highness, since you are in good health, why is your pulse different before and after using the needles? Does it mean that you were not in the best state before? Hearing Chu Liuchen's question, Xiao Wanru didn't hide it and frowned slightly. Chu Liuchen had always been in good health, but his pulse was a little different from what she had expected. Did you get the pulse? Chu Liuchen looked at Xiao Wanru with a faint smile, held Xiao Wanru's hand with his thin hand, and gently rubbed her palm with a little force. Xiao Wanru let out a low cry of pain, but then her eyes lit up and she immediately understood. Your Highness, did you do it on purpose? I have been immersed in this for so many years. How can I recover so easily? Of course, I have to be weak again. If I recover so soon, it will be a waste of others' efforts to spy on me. Chu Liuchen laughed out loud. The forces behind Prince Yu and Prince Zhou will keep an eye on you. Xiao Wanru immediately figured it out. She opened her watery eyes wide and looked a little surprised. Her expression pleased Chu Liuchen. He let go of Xiao Wanru's hand, reached out to hold Xiao Wanru in his arms, and let her lean against his chest. Her soft and warm fragrance fell into his arms. The place in his heart, which seemed to be missing for a long time, was filled. They have been trying to find out about my health. Until now, they still can't believe that I have recovered. In this case, I'll make them more suspicious. I asked Qi Ju to make some medicine. Every time my pulse is different before and after using the needles. Sometimes the imperial physician will check it by comparison, and sometimes he won't. Chu Liuchen said lazily. Will they find out about this imperial physician? Xiao Wanru gasped and immediately understood the meaning of Chu Liuchen's words. At first glance, she could tell that this imperial physician was the trusted subordinate of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. The Empress and concubine Da have been in the palace for so many years, and they have a lot of subordinates. Chu Liuchen smiled and said knowingly. Xiao Wanru understood his words. She nodded and leaned against Chu Liuchen's chest softly. Master, the palace sent someone again. Xiao Xuanzi reported outside the door. Xiao Wanru wanted to sit up straight, but she was held by Chu Liuchen. She heard it clearly, but she didn't know what the word again meant. When she was in the room just now, she clearly didn't see Xiao Xuanzi come to report, so Chu Luqian had known it long ago and had already given the order. How many times has it been? Chu Luqian asked lazily. The third time. Xiao Xuanzi said, the first time was sent by concubine De, and then by the Empress. Now it's concubine De and the Empress who sent someone together. I told them that you were doing acupuncture and couldn't enter the palace. Now the imperial physician has returned to the palace. Then I'll go and have a look. Chu Luqian said. Yes, I'll go and prepare now. Xiao Xuanzi understood tacitly and left to prepare for entering the palace. Are you going to the palace now? Xiao Wanru stood up with Chu Luqian. Yes, they were beaten, so concubine De and the Empress thought of me. But I couldn't leave just now, so I could only wait until now. The beating should be over. Chu Luqian said slowly. Pfft, Xiao Wanru laughed, and her watery eyes became more and more charming. She naturally understood Chu Luqian's words. He did it on purpose. He deliberately let the two princes be beaten, but he couldn't leave at the moment and couldn't persuade the emperor. Acupuncture was very important to his health. No one could criticize him for not being brotherly and not pleading with the emperor when he was doing acupuncture. Since the Empress and concubine De are so anxious, won't they plead with the emperor themselves? After laughing, Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her red lips. Of course they will. They should still be at my uncle's place now, but it's useless. Chu Luqian raised his eyebrows and smiled coquettishly. His eyes were not as gentle as they used to be, but were full of evil coldness. Both the Empress and concubine De felt that they were still valuable at this time, so they came to him one by one. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said, You just recovered from acupuncture. You are not in good health, so you don't have to go. I really don't have to go, but since you want me to go there so much, I'll go there. Chu Luqian said lazily, and then his eyes softened, You are tired just now. Go and have a rest. I'll be back soon. Knowing that he was bound to go to the imperial palace, Xiao Wanru nodded, took the initiative to hold his hand, and said, Be careful. Although she knew that her words were superfluous, how could Chu Luqian be schemed against by others with his shrewdness? However, she still blurted out these words inexplicably, and the concern in her watery eyes was obvious. Chu Luqian smiled. His smile was elegant and cheerful. Anyone could feel his happiness. That kind of happiness really came from the bottom of his heart. Don't worry. I'll be back soon. You take a rest first. Xiao Xuanzi had prepared a wheelchair at the gate of the courtyard. Chu Luqian sat in the wheelchair, and then Xiao Xuanzi slowly pushed him to the side door connected to the palace gate. Outside the imperial study, there were two luxurious women kneeling. The one kneeling in front was the Empress, and the one kneeling one step behind her was concubine De. The two of them knelt one after the other, looking extremely miserable. Not far behind them, Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou both struggled to kneel. The two of them were not in good condition. They had been beaten before, and at this time, they just struggled to not faint. The two of them glared at each other fiercely, and both of them wanted the other to fall first. Your Highness Prince Chen, please. A eunuch led Chu Luqian over. The wheelchair stopped under the imperial palace, and Chu Luqian got up and walked to the imperial study. When he walked past Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou, no one stopped. Then he passed by concubine De, and finally stopped in front of the Empress. Greetings, Empress. Prince Chen, please plead for mercy for Prince Yu and Prince Shou. They are in such a situation now, and your Majesty has vented his anger. I hope your Majesty can let them go for the sake that they have suffered unjustly from Duke Yong's mansion. The Empress raised her eyes and looked at Chu Luqian. Even though she looked very embarrassed at this time, the Empress still had a calm look on her face. Uncle should know what to do. Chu Luqian said lightly, and then turned around and still walked to the imperial study. The Empress's face became gloomy, and there was a trace of coldness at the bottom of her eyes. In fact, she had no choice, otherwise she would not have asked Chu Luqian to plead for them in such a hurry. She wanted Chu Luiyue to be beaten to death, but she still had to maintain the demeanor of a motherly model of the world. Now her demeanor was disgraced by Chu Luchen. She had lowered herself, but Chu Luchen didn't tell her the truth. How could she not be angry? But she also knew that Chu Luchen had always been so arrogant, like a noble child, so she could only clench her teeth secretly. Endure, she could endure anything. One day, she would trample all of them under her feet. Chapter 921. Complete version. The latest chapter on treating the crown princess as soon as possible. For all these, the empress felt that she could bear all her tolerance. Lowering her head to hide the excitement in her eyes, the empress calmed her breath and still knelt with a dignified and decent look. Even for Chu Luiyue, who quarreled with her son, she did not express any complaints. Uncle. Chu Luchen stepped into the imperial study and saluted to the emperor. Have you finished acupuncture? How do you feel? The emperor, who was angry, immediately asked with concern when he saw Chu Luchen. He looked up and down Chu Liuchen's face and was relieved when he found that Chu Luchen looked better than before. Thank you for your concern. I'm fine now. Chu Luchen said. I heard that you have punished 2 imperial brothers. Uncle, please spare them. Chu Luchen said lightly. There was no reluctance on his face, but he did not have much intention to be close to the 2 princes. The 2 unfilial sons have done such a thing. How can I let them go so easily? The emperor was annoyed when he mentioned Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou. Many things had happened to them recently, and each of them made the emperor angry. In fact, it was not a big deal to figure out what had happened today. However, because of the pile of previous incidents, the emperor found an excuse to vent his anger, so he beat the 2 princes together. After beating them, he did not stop and continued to make them kneel. He even alarmed the empress and concubine De in the imperial harem. But even if the empress and concubine De came, the emperor did not intend to let them go. The emperor clenched his hands hard and suppressed the rolling anger in his heart. Uncle, since you have already punished Duke Yong, you still left the title of nobility for Duke Yong, which means that it is not a big deal. Now that you have punished my eldest brother and second brother again and again, what will the officials think of it? Will they come to a wrong conclusion? Seeing that the emperor did not speak, Chu Luchen continued to say calmly, I didn't want to come just now. After all, I don't want to get involved in this kind of thing. Now that I have recovered, it is not convenient for me to intervene in this kind of thing too much. Otherwise, the officials will be shocked again. The emperor put his hands on the imperial desk, and his face showed bitterness. He knew what Chu Luchen meant. Wrong information. Wasn't that the wrong information? The position of the crown prince had not been decided, and the East Palace was hanging high. He was also considering the succession of the throne between Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou. At present, if he punished the 2 princes who were most likely to inherit the throne because of a small matter, did it mean that the emperor did not favor them? Including Chu Luchen, there were a total of 4 princes. If it was not the first 2 princes, it might be the last 2 princes. There were many courtiers watching in secret. It was very likely that something else would happen because of this matter. At that time, it would be even more out of control. As for what Chu Luchen said, the emperor was even more distressed. He pursed his lips tightly. If he could, he really didn't want to see such a scene. Let these 2 unfilial sons go back to rest. The emperor said coldly. Durong immediately responded and left. He ordered a few little eunuchs to help Prince Yu and Prince Zhou up first. When they were helped up, they almost fainted. The empress and concubine Da also hurriedly got up and went to comfort their sons. At the same time, they asked someone to find a soft couch and carry them away from here to rest. Eunuch Durong, please thank Prince Chen for me. The empress stayed at the end and whispered to Durong. I will definitely bring your words to him. Durong said with a smile on his face. I don't know what Prince Chen said to let the emperor let the 2 princes go. After I go back, I must thank Prince Chen heavily. If it weren't for Prince Chen, I wonder how long the emperor would punish the two princes. The empress's face was full of gratitude. Durong shook his head and said, "Empress, you're too serious." In fact, the emperor pitied the two princes. As for what Chu Luchen had said, Durong kept silent. Seeing that she couldn't get anything out of him, the empress could only turn around and leave. Durong was still so annoying that she couldn't get anything out of him. Concubine De, who was not far away, looked at the empress and took a step forward with a cold look. She was not the empress, so she didn't have to pretend to be calm and dignified. She was obviously very angry, but she still had to show that she treated everyone equally. She couldn't do that. Now she hated Prince Zhou very much. She just hoped that Prince Zhou and the pretentious empress in front of her would die immediately. Her son was the eldest son. Why couldn't he inherit the throne? In the imperial study, when Durong came in to report, Chu Luchen had already taken his seat. After the report, he stood behind the emperor. In addition to the uncle and nephew in the imperial study, only Durong was waiting on the emperor. Chen, which one do you think is more suitable, your eldest brother or your second brother? The emperor suddenly asked. His eyes fell on Chu Liuchen's face with some scrutiny. Durong hid his body in the back of the wide chair behind the emperor, motionless. He really didn't want to hear this kind of words, but he had to listen. Whether it was the empress, Prince Yu or Prince Zhou, they probably didn't expect that the emperor would throw such a big problem to Prince Chen, who was the most unlikely one. But was it really the most unlikely one? Eunuch Durong, who had experienced many years of ups and downs, didn't dare to think so. What else was the most impossible thing in the palace? I don't know. Chu Luchen said. His delicate lips curved into a smile, but it was very faint and cold, without any emotional fluctuation, as if he was talking about the most ordinary thing and the thing that had the least to do with him. Tell me. The emperor stubbornly wanted to get an answer from him. Uncle, if you insist on asking me to say, I can only say that I can't see it. I really can't see whether my eldest brother or my second brother is suitable. If their temperaments complement each other, it will be the best. Chu Luchen didn't hide his meaning and said straightforwardly. Zhou, may be a little impulsive, but you, can take the overall situation into consideration. The emperor hoped to see a trace of fluctuation on Chu Liuchen's face, but he was still calm. If my eldest brother can take the overall situation into consideration, what happened today wouldn't have happened. It seems to be well planned. Uncle, you can't get any definite evidence until now. Chu Luchen said disapprovingly. There was a sarcastic meaning in his words, which made the emperor shrink and feel inexplicably ashamed. Chu Luyue was most likely to be the culprit of what happened today. After all, Chu Liuzhou used to be impatient and prone to make mistakes. He didn't seem to be a person who could be so meticulous. Of course, this matter was not absolute. This also made the emperor unable to determine who was playing tricks behind the scenes, so he beat both of his sons. Since he couldn't figure it out, he simply beat them together. Anyway, the two of them had caused a lot of trouble recently. Do you think Xian is good? Hearing Chu Liuchen's words, the emperor didn't want to mention his two annoying sons, so he mentioned his youngest son after thinking about it. Fourth brother is good. Chu Luchen nodded without hesitation. This was not what the emperor wanted. He had never thought of letting Chu Liuxin be a member of the East Palace before. Compared with his other sons, this youngest son was too jumpy and had the temperament of a child. Now he was even more uncomfortable. Originally, he was still a child. If he stayed with him for a few more years, he might calm down. However, since what happened to Xiao Yanru, Chu Liuxin seemed to have been hiding from the emperor. Not only did he refuse to come to the court for various reasons, but he also rarely saw him in the palace. Every time he saw him, he could always see the shame in his eyes. This also aroused the emperor's memory. The memory about Xiao Yanru was also very unbearable for the emperor. Therefore, when he met his youngest son, he inexplicably felt a little embarrassed, as if he had taken his son's woman. This was all caused by Xiao Yanru, and the emperor increasingly disliked Xiao Yanru. No matter how beautiful this woman was, he didn't like her. She was a trouble, so he simply locked her in the palace and let her never see the light of day. You can't. The emperor shook his head and looked at Chu Luchen. In fact, compared with the others, he appreciated the person in front of him more. Chu Luchen calmly talked to his brothers, but he didn't take their advice. Chu Luchen was not anxious at all. His self-restraint was far inferior to the others. Then it can only be my eldest brother and second brother. Chu Luchen casually reached out and flicked the dust on his clothes. His behavior was calm and elegant, and his lazy attitude made people feel that he was noble and leisurely from the bottom of his heart. Even if he did not speak, such behavior was also pleasing to the eye. The emperor didn't want to talk about his two sons who were fighting with each other, so he changed the topic and became worried. Is it really okay for you to go to the southern border this time? In fact, he was against Chu Luchen sending messengers to the Su state in the southern border. In the emperor's opinion, it was enough to have Chu Qing. It was just a small country in a small place. How could it shake his position? Uncle, I originally wanted to go out for a walk. It's good to take this opportunity to go out. Chu Luchen said with a smile, I also wanted to go far before, but my body couldn't bear it. I had no choice. Going to Jiangzhou was the farthest place he had ever gone before. Thinking of meeting the woman he cared about most in Jiangzhou, Chu Luchen couldn't help showing a handsome smile on his face, and his eyes became a little gentle. You have just been married, and you are going to leave. It's not good for your princess. The emperor knew that Chu Luchen married Xiao Wanru because he loved her. At this time, he couldn't help mentioning Xiao Wanru. He really didn't want Chu Luchen to take risks, not even a little. Zhuozhuo will come to accompany Imperial Grandmother when she is free. With the protection of Imperial Grandmother and uncle, she will be fine. I have also told her that if there is any problem she can't solve, she can turn to Imperial Grandmother and uncle for support. My princess must not be bullied by others. Chu Luchen raised his head, and his eyes were full of brilliance and he looked proud. It could even be said that he was arrogant. At first glance, it was obvious that he was spoiled. But the emperor was willing to do so, so he nodded repeatedly and said, yes, of course, your princess must not be bullied by others. Don't worry and go. I will definitely take care of Princess Chen. Chapter 922. The emperor's meaning was very clear. Originally, when Chu Luchen was here, he was willing to take care of the young couple. Now that Chu Luchen had sent a messenger, he naturally couldn't make his nephew's wife feel wronged. The emperor also felt that his nephew's pride with a kind attitude was very enjoyable. Compared with his two sons who wanted to get benefits from him, Chu Luchen was much better. I thank you on behalf of Zhuozhuo, uncle. Chu Luchen stood up with a smile on his face. Seeing his intimate attitude, the emperor's mood recovered a lot. After talking to him about the southern border for a while, he let Chu Luchen go back. Durong, do you think I'm wrong? After Chu Luchen left and the imperial study quieted down, the emperor suddenly asked. The sweat on Durong's forehead was about to drip down. He hurriedly lowered his head and said, Your Majesty, you are wise. What do you mean by wise? If you were really wise, such a thing wouldn't have happened. The emperor sighed and leaned against the back of the large chair. This child, in the end, I let him down. Prince Chen will definitely not blame you. Durong said vaguely. If he knew, he would blame me, but I had no choice at that time. The emperor sighed heavily again, looking extremely upset. Your Majesty, you are very kind to Prince Chen. Even your own son is no better than that. Durong lowered his head and tried to make himself look calm. In this palace, the most special person is Prince Chen. Only Prince Chen can do whatever he wants in the palace. These words made the emperor happy, and a kind smile slowly appeared on his frowning face. This child was born with a weak physique, and he almost died several times. But he was able to grow up and live well. How can I let others bully him again? Your Majesty, you are so kind. Durong lowered his head and said. The emperor was speechless for a moment and thought of many things in the past. He had spent the most effort on Chu Luchen. At first, he was just afraid that the child could not survive. Now that the child had recovered, he was really gratified. Compared with his other sons, Chu Luchen was smart and indifferent, and he did not care about the throne at all. Compared to the way he usually spoke, it was more like a pair of ordinary father and son. It's just that he doesn't have a deep friendship with those brothers. The emperor said again, and he couldn't help but frown. Prince Chen is not in good health. When he was a child, the imperial physician had always told him not to be too emotional and to control his emotions. After so many years, even if Prince Chen is in good health now, it is impossible for him to be too close to the other princes. Durong said in a low voice. These words made the emperor feel a burst of bitterness. This child was really a bitter person. Besides, it wasn't that he didn't have feelings for others. The emperor sighed. This child is actually a sentimental person. Durong really wanted to ask the emperor how he could see this. Everyone in the palace knew that Prince Chen was cold-hearted. If anyone made him unhappy, he would not give face to anyone. Although those princes were all princes, they had suffered many losses in Prince Chen's hands. It was like this when they were young, and it was even more so when they grew up. Of course, Durong would not take the initiative to remind the emperor of this. The emperor's heart was originally partial. As a trusted eunuch who followed the emperor, of course, he had to be partial as well. Prince Chen is very filial to the emperor and the empress dowager. Rong Xian said with a grin. In fact, this was the only good thing about Prince Chen. No one else in the palace could enter Prince Chen's eyes. Of course, Prince Chen, who was protected by the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, didn't need to be kind to others, even the other princes were the same. When he was in a good mood, he would call those princes brothers, but when he was in a bad mood, he would be directly cold and ruthless. As for the gentle smile on his face from time to time, it was actually a mask. Durong believed that Prince Chen was unintentional. Thinking of this, he felt a chill on his back. Every time he saw Prince Chen, who was sick, Durong felt that he was in high spirits. Chu Luchen left the imperial study and did not rush back to the mansion. He asked Xiao Xuanzi to push the wheelchair to the Empress Dowager's Palace of Benevolent Peace. When he arrived at the Palace of Benevolent Peace, he saw that not only the Empress Dowager but also Concubine Da was in the main hall. Concubine Da, whose eyes were red, seemed to have cried. When she saw Chu Luchen come in, she hurriedly turned her head to wipe away her tears. When she looked back, she already showed a smile. After Chu Luchen bowed to her, she said slowly, Empress Dowager, Prince Chen is really filial. He still comes to see you at this time. This child is a sentimental person. The Empress Dowager narrowed her eyes with a smile and reached out to beckon Chu Luchen to sit down beside her. She found him pleasing to the eye. Not only was he good-looking, but he was also sentimental. Now that he had recovered, he would soon have a great-grandson for her. Concubine Da glanced at the Empress Dowager speechlessly, and then looked at Chu Luchen's face. Chu Luchen behaved very gently, but he didn't care much about Concubine Da. He just bowed to her when he came in, and then ignored her. What kind of sentimental person was this? However, Concubine Da didn't dare to rebuke Chu Luchen. He was the Empress Dowager's darling. Obviously, her son was the eldest son of the emperor. As the Empress Dowager's first grandson, shouldn't he be more favored by the Empress Dowager? Why did everyone pay attention to such a sickly child? Is Prince Chen better? Concubine Da was dissatisfied in her heart, but she didn't dare to show it on her face. She asked softly. Thanks to Concubine Da, I'm not bad. Chu Luchen said. The imperial physician didn't say anything, did he? The Empress Dowager couldn't help asking. As long as Chu Luchen's health was mentioned, the Empress Dowager would be worried. Imperial grandmother, I'm in good health recently. Don't worry. In a few days, I will send a messenger to a diplomatic mission. I hope Imperial Grandmother can take care of Zhuozhuo. Chu Luqin said softly. Can't you not go? The Empress Dowager just learned about it, and she was full of displeasure when she said it. Someone has to go. Anyway, my health is better now. It's okay to go. Chu Luqin comforted the Empress Dowager with a smile. The Empress Dowager was really unwilling, but she also knew that Chu Luqin had made a decision, and she couldn't refuse it. This child had always been a strong-minded person. A sickly child. When his health is a little better, he runs all over the world. Isn't he afraid of dying outside? Concubine De sneered in her heart. It was better for him to die outside, lest this sickly child would have other ideas after he recovered. Prince Qin is dedicated to the country. Empress Dowager, you can rest assured. Yu had talked about this before, and praised Prince Qin again and again. He said that if Prince Qin didn't accept the imperial decree, he would also want to go out to sea. I heard that there are many things in the southern border. We've never seen them before. Concubine De flattered Empress Dowager with a smile. She didn't show it on her face. But the meaning of her words faintly showed that Chu Luqin was going to have fun. If Concubine De thinks it's good, then let my brother go. Chu Luqin said. His words made Concubine De choke, and her face became flustered. Of course, she didn't want Chu Luiyue to go to the southern border, even if there was no danger in the southern border. At this time, it was a critical time to fight for the throne. How could Chu Luiyue leave the capital city? She forced a smile and tried to make her smile look aggrieved. I originally wanted to let you, go, but he was punished by the emperor just now. I'm afraid he can't get out of bed for 10 days or even half a month. Speaking of this, Concubine De's eyes turned red again when she thought of what had happened just now. She turned to the Empress Dowager and said, Empress Dowager, you, was also framed, and now he was beaten. When I went to see you, just now, he actually took me and asked me to see whether the emperor was angry or not. He is already in such a state, but he still worries about the emperor. My brother is really considerate of my uncle. If he knows it, he must be happy. Chu Luqin said indifferently. Hu Yan's meaning was obvious. Concubine De blinked her eyes. She didn't get the desired effect, so she couldn't continue acting for a while. She could only say, vaguely, and then turned her head to wipe her tears, but it was inappropriate to mention the topic just now. A trace of anger flashed in her eyes. Chu Luqin was getting more and more annoying, but she couldn't do anything to him. Not only could she do nothing to him, but she also had to care for Chu Luqin because of the emperor and the Empress Dowager, which made her feel both aggrieved and angry. When the emperor's decree was delivered to Duke Yong's mansion, Countess Yong rolled her eyes and fainted as soon as she heard that Di Yan's position as the heir of Duke Yong was gone and that the title of Duke Yong was gone. Di Yan's face also turned pale, and he almost couldn't believe the eunuch who read the decree. After the eunuch finished reading the decree, he took the imperial decree from the eunuch's hand. After reading it over and over again, he staggered and almost fell down. He lost his title, and from then on, he would be like an ordinary person. If he couldn't pass the imperial examination, the Di family would completely decline, and from then on, it would no longer be a noble family. How could this happen? Why was he involved in this matter? It was obviously the trouble caused by his mother and Qin Yuru, and it had nothing to do with him. Di Yan was almost dumbfounded. He stared at the imperial decree in his hand, and his fingers trembled. Cousin. Qin Yuru was also shocked and couldn't believe it. She walked over and wanted to take a closer look at the imperial decree in Di Yan's hand. Could it be a mistake? How could this happen? Early this morning, Countess Yong took Di Yan to Ningyuan Army General's mansion. She not only promised to return all the money to Qin Yuru slowly, but also asked Di Yan to send away all the concubines and live a good life with Qin Yuru. They completely gave in here. After being persuaded by Qin Huayong and listening to Madame Di, Qin Yuru followed Di Yan back to Duke Yong's mansion. Unexpectedly, before they could sit down, the imperial decree came, and Di Yan's title of the heir was gone. Di Yan's title of the heir was gone, and even if she had children in the future, she could not have a title. Qin Yuru also panicked. Pa! A heavy slap came. Chapter 923. The matter of Duke Yong's mansion was originally just a dispute between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. However, not only the daughter-in-law's dowry shop but also her sister-in-law's dowry shop, and the most unbelievable thing was that it lasted for nearly 20 years. The daughter-in-law was very decisive and directly sued her mother-in-law in the court. At the same time, the mother-in-law also tried to murder her daughter-in-law. When her daughter-in-law had a miscarriage, she mixed the medicine that her daughter-in-law gave her with the powder that was harmful to children. As a mother-in-law, she actually did such a thing. It could be said that she made one mistake after another. She was so vicious and greedy that it made people's hair stand on end. But even so, this matter was just a dispute in the backyard. Everyone was waiting for Duke Yong to divorce Countess Yong. Unexpectedly, things took a turn. The mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law actually reconciled early the next morning. It was a mistake that the mother-in-law coveted the daughter-in-law's dowry. In fact, the daughter-in-law's biological mother knew about this, but she didn't tell her daughter-in-law because she was young and didn't want to take responsibility. As for the matter of drugging the daughter-in-law, it was done by an old maid of the mother-in-law. It was said that this old maid received money from a concubine in the backyard of Duke Yong's heir, so she deliberately wanted to harm the daughter-in-law and sow discord between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. Qin Yuru even went to the yamen and personally withdrew the complaint. At this point, it seemed that the big matter would be reduced to a small one, and the small one would be resolved. Those who wanted to find a bench to sit down and watch the fun were very disappointed. They had thought that it would be a big play. But what happened next was beyond many people's expectations. In the end, this matter did not fall on Countess Yong, but on Duke Yong and heir of Duke Yong. Heir Di Yan's title was erased, and Duke Yong's title of nobility was ended. The consequence was much more serious than that of Countess Yong. For a moment, the court and the public were shocked and didn't understand why a backyard matter would cause such a big trouble. A well-informed person secretly got the news. It seemed that the two princes had colluded with a courtier, and the courtier they had colluded with was Duke Yong. Because of this, Duke Yong's title of nobility was gone. This was the news from the palace, and it could be roughly found out that not only Duke Yong was punished, but also Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were punished. The two princes were beaten outside the imperial study, and even the empress and concubine Do were alarmed. The two concubines knelt outside the imperial study and begged for mercy. These two had the highest status in the imperial harem, but they only knelt outside the imperial study to plead for mercy. It could be seen that the emperor was very angry. In this case, Duke Yong was actually lucky that he could stay alive and keep the title of nobility after getting involved in such a thing. However, there was another problem. This matter had nothing to do with Di Yan, the former heir of Duke Yong's mansion. Why was he punished but not Duke Yong? Was it because Duke Yong pushed all the blame to heir of Duke Yong when he reported to the emperor in the imperial study, which made the emperor so angry that he removed Duke Yong's title as heir of Duke Yong? This statement was actually close to the truth. At that time, when Di Ruffin was in the palace, he pushed all the blame to Di Yan. But at that time, he just wanted to push this matter to the fight in the backyard, so he said that if he knew that his descendants would lose the title of nobility, Duke Yong would rather let Countess Yong take all the responsibility for this matter. Because of this matter, people outside the palace were speculating, but it was just speculation. The yamen had withdrawn the complaint. However, the atmosphere in the palace was very tense. There was a storm surging in the dark, and people were secretly inquiring about the specific accident. It was related to the two princes, and everyone wanted to know the emperor's intention. Compared with many more rumors outside the palace, the inside of the palace was in a state of panic, and the whole environment became tense. Even the concubines in the palace were very cautious, for fear that they would make a mistake and inexplicably end up like Duke Yong. This matter was really just an innocent disaster. Heir of Duke Yong was really pitiful. He married a dissolute wife and had a greedy and vicious mother. Some people even said that they saw the former heir of Duke Yong's mansion leave Duke Yong's mansion angrily, rush out of the city in anger, and hadn't come back yet. Your Highness, the carriage is ready. Yu Jie came in and reported to Xiao Wanru. Let's go. Xiao Wanru nodded and walked out, followed closely by Yu Jie and Chu Lu. Yesterday, Marquis Xing's mansion sent an invitation card, asking her to go there today. It was said that Commandery Prince Qing would come to ask for the marriage of the daughter of Marquis Xing's mansion today, and they asked her to come and check it out. In fact, the so-called check was, of course, to avoid people's attention. When the daughter of Marquis Xing's mansion got married, it would be Xiao Wanru's turn to make the decision. But since they said so, Xiao Wanru didn't refuse. On the one hand, if she refused this kind of thing, it would make people feel that she was being unreasonable and even lose her filial piety. Old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion was the main filial piety. Before everything was revealed, Xiao Wanru could only abide by this filial piety. Of course, she would not blindly feel wronged. She just seemed to be good to Old Madam of Marquis Xing on the surface, but she still had many doubts about Marquis Xing's mansion. Because she was an unmarried girl, she was congenitally suppressed. Now she was also suppressed, but because of her new identity as Princess Chen, she didn't need to show weakness in many aspects as before. She got on the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion with her servant girl. The carriage went out of the gate of Prince Chen's mansion and headed for Marquis Xing's mansion. The carriage of Prince Chen's mansion was mainly spacious, luxurious and comfortable. This carriage was specially prepared for Xiao Wanru by Chu Luchen. Although it didn't look very eye-catching, it was spacious and very comfortable. The materials inside looked just a little more gorgeous than ordinary carriages, but in fact, no matter the materials, design or other aspects, they were incomparable to ordinary carriages. There was a faint kind of low-key luxury in it. When the carriage arrived at Marquis Xing's mansion, the servants of Marquis Xing's mansion immediately reported it and opened the door to welcome Xiao Wanru. When the carriage stopped, Zhao Shiran had come out with Xiao Keiling. After the greeting, they went to the inner courtyard together. It was said that Commandery Prince Qing had been waiting in Old Madam's Chuntang courtyard at this time. Zhao Shiran was good at talking, and her words were always pleasant. She didn't make people feel that she was trying to curry favor with her too much, nor would she make people feel cold. She treated Xiao Wanru as her biological sister and didn't feel alienated because of her marriage. Xiao Keiling could also talk to Xiao Wanru now. Although she was not as good at talking as Zhao Shiran, she could always liven up the atmosphere when she said a few words from time to time. The three of them talked and laughed amiably. When they arrived at the Chuntang courtyard, a sharp-eyed servant girl saw them and hurriedly went in to report. Old Madam winked at Nanny Yu beside her. Nanny Yu understood and hurriedly came to the door to welcome them. Your Highness, you're here. I'm your servant. Nanny Yu came up to Xiao Wanru with a smile and bowed to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru waved her hand and motioned for her to rise. Is Grandma inside? Commandery Prince Qing and the first young master are also inside. Nanny Yu answered with a smile. Xiao Wanru nodded and went downstairs. The servant girl lifted the curtain and Xiao Wanru walked in. Old Madam, who was sitting on the couch near the window, had a smile on her face. She was wearing a light brown coat with the characters of 10,000 blessings and looked particularly energetic. She held a string of Buddha beads in her hand and casually fiddled with them, looking somewhat indifferent. Her smiling face was somewhat similar to that of Xiao Jing, Marquis Xing. At this moment, she looked particularly kind. When she saw Xiao Wanru, her eyes even lit up and she couldn't help sitting up a little. Before Xiao Wanru bowed, she waved her hand and said, "Fifth girl, come here and sit down with Grandma. You've been so busy, but you've been paying attention to the affairs of the Marquis's mansion. Take care of your health." Her doting look almost made Xiao Wanru think that she had come to the wrong place and seen the wrong person. She narrowed her watery eyes, stepped forward and bowed to Old Madam, "Grandma. Fifth sister, you'd better sit beside Grandma. Since you got married, Grandma has been thinking about you. I'm afraid that you don't have a good life in Prince Chen's mansion. Besides, you're too young to take responsibility and mess things up. Prince Chen's mansion is not Marquis Xing's mansion. If you mess things up, Grandma can't help you even if I want to. Zhao Shiran also followed old madam's words and said affectionately. If someone didn't know the meaning of the affectionate words, he might think that Xiao Wanru had been favored in the Marquis's mansion in the past. Xiao Wanru only felt it was funny. Old madam intended to pretend in front of Commandery Prince Qing. Of course, she did it not just for the sake of her reputation. She must want to suppress Commandery Prince Qing with Chu Liuchen's influence. This was in line with her intention. She was very willing to watch a good show quietly. Since old madam was willing to pretend in this way, she didn't care. She smiled slightly, bowed to them one by one politely, and then sat down beside old madam with a faint gentle look. Thank you for your concern, Grandma. I'm fine in Prince Chen's mansion. The people in Prince Chen's mansion are simple and there are no other people, so it's basically impossible for me to mess things up. Her tone was neither cold nor warm, and she was not as amiable and clingy as old madam. Even when she sat beside old madam, she sat upright, which was not the attitude that a favored granddaughter should have at all. She was dressed in a simple and elegant plain white dress, but became vivid and charming because of the hot red plum blossom embroidery. Her cherry lips were as red as fire, and her skin was as white and beautiful as snow. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and when they trembled slightly, it seemed that they were trembling people's hearts, making people's hearts itch and unable to extricate themselves. Even though Chu Qing had seen Xiao Wanru's appearance, he couldn't help swallowing softly. This fifth Miss Xiao was the real unrivaled beauty in the world. No wonder he had mistaken her for someone else when he was in the Yuhui nunnery. At that time, he had thought that the first Miss Xiao with the most beautiful eyes was the first Miss Xiao, but unexpectedly, it was the fifth Miss Xiao. Thinking of what he had received at that time, Chu Qing's eyes became deeper and his heart beat faster unconsciously. Was it her or Xiao Yanru's scheme? Chapter 924. Seeing Xiao Wanru's indifferent expression, old madam hated her in her heart, but she didn't show any dissatisfaction on her face. She still looked affectionate and pushed a plate of snacks in front of Xiao Wanru. Try this snack. It was made by the new cook in the mansion. If you think it's good, you can take this cook back later. This cook is also from Jiangzhou and is good at making snacks in Changjiangzhou. There were not many snacks on the plate, only about 10 pieces. They were indeed the characteristics of snacks in Jiangzhou. Xiao Wanru grew up in Jiangzhou. Even though she had moved to the capital city now, she would occasionally think of the food in Jiangzhou because of her eating habits. However, she couldn't find anyone in the capital city who was good at the food in Changjiangzhou, so she gradually gave up this idea. Now when she saw it again, she couldn't help but move her index finger slightly. Yu Jie took a piece of it with a handkerchief for her. Xiao Wanru took it and took a bite. She nodded with a smile and said, "It tastes very pure." "Since it's pure, take the cook over later," old madam said with a smile. "Thank you, Grandma." The smile on Xiao Wanru's snow-white face became gentler. She put down the handkerchief in her hand, stood up, and bowed deeply to old madam. "Don't be so polite. I'm your grandma, so I naturally hope that you can eat well. You have been in Jiangzhou for so many years, so I'm afraid that the food in the capital city is a little different. It happens that such a cook comes over, so I thought that you could take her away if you think it's good." Old madam took Xiao Wanru's hand and pulled her to sit down lovingly. "Grandma, fifth sister must know your feelings for her. Fifth sister has been very filial to you in the past," Zhao Shiran said with a smile. While flattering old madam, he also flattered Xiao Wanru. She was indeed a smooth and slick person, and even her heart was crystal clear. She seemed to be very close to everyone in Marquis Xing's mansion, as if what happened on the wedding day had nothing to do with her. Xiao Wanru smiled calmly and turned to look at Chu Qing with her watery eyes deepened. Seeing that she noticed Chu Qing, old madam winked at Zhao Shiran. Zhao Shiran said with a smile, pointed at Chu Qing, and said, "Fifth sister, I happen to have something to ask you." "You're welcome, first sister-in-law. As a married woman with an elder, how can I make any decision?" Xiao Wanru smiled silently. Although fifth younger sister is married, she is still the daughter of the Xiao enterprise. This matter was originally decided by grandmother, but it is related to the future of the two younger sisters. Grandmother wanted more people to help make decisions, so she invited fifth younger sister here. Zhao Shiran said. Xiao Wanru said softly, "Eldest sister-in-law, please go ahead." Of course, she knew that since she came here today, old madam would definitely say it. She just slightly refused to let old madam understand that she could not interfere in this matter now. This matter is really related to second younger sister and fifth younger sister. Zhao Shiran said. She looked up at Xiao Kailing and sighed. Originally, this matter was only related to second younger sister, but second younger sister said that this marriage should be given to third younger sister. Give the marriage to Xiao Caihuan. From Zhao Shiran's words, of course, Xiao Jia did this for Xiao Caihuan. Xiao Caihuan's appearance had been damaged recently, and she didn't know how she was doing recently. But in any case, she should be fine now. Giving the marriage to Xiao Jia was also for Xiao Caihuan's good. How could Xiao Jia be such a person? Xiao Wanru's eyes were full of sadness. How could she not know Xiao Jia's character? What do you think, grandmother? Xiao Wanru asked. I didn't want to do this at first, but after thinking about it, it is good for everyone. No matter how bad third young lady is, she is the daughter of lineal descent, while second young lady is just a daughter of a concubine. It is also a good thing for Commandery Prince Qing to marry as a daughter of lineal descent. Old madam sighed. Her words made Chu Qing's heart skip a beat. Just now, old madam did say that their mansion wanted to marry Xiao Caihuan into his mansion. While they were talking, Xiao Wanru came. If it was really like this, it was not bad. A daughter of lineal descent was naturally better than a daughter of a concubine. But there are many people in the imperial palace who know about the marriage between second sister and Commandery Prince Qing. Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes unhurriedly and reminded them. This is good for both Marquis Xing's mansion and Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. The only bad thing is here, so I have to trouble you to explain it to the Empress Dowager. It's not that our mansion is reluctant to let second sister go, but third sister is more suitable for this matter than second sister. Zhao Shiran frowned, looked around Xiao Wanru's face, and said in distress. What happened to Xiao Jia and Xiao Caihuan happened in the imperial palace. Speaking of the situation at that time, both Xiao Jia and Xiao Caihuan seemed to be victims, and they were both innocent. Since both of them were innocent and they were willing to exchange, it was a good thing for the two mansions. If the Empress Dowager and the Empress in the imperial palace knew about it, they would sympathize and agree with them. Grandma, I'm just a married girl, and I'm a little younger than second sister and third sister. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for me to tell them about this matter. Xiao Wanru shook her head, smiled, and refused bluntly. Old madam's face darkened and her face darkened. Fifth sister, in fact, you don't have to say anything. As long as you tell them about what happened between our mansion and Commandery Prince Qing, the Empress Dowager will definitely make a decision for us. Zhao Shiran explained. I don't dare. Xiao Wanru said with an imperceptible sneer across the corners of her mouth. She was going to push the blame to her. Exchanging Xiao Jia for Xiao Caihuan was originally for something else, and it was closely related to her cheap second uncle. No matter what he was up to, it would not do her any good. If it was exposed in the future, it would fall on Prince Chen's mansion. In contrast, Marquis Xing's mansion was innocent. At that time, they could completely say that they took advantage of their identity as Princess Chen to enforce the law in Marquis Xing's mansion. Because they didn't get along well with Xiao Jia they forced Xiao Jia's marriage to Xiao Caihuan. Old madam's words were enough to turn right and wrong upside down. As for Zhao Shiran, he was completely able to say what people said and what people said. Fifth girl, you are unwilling. You are the dignified Princess Chen. You just need to say this kind of thing. Why don't you dare to do it? Old Madam said with a cold face. Grandma, I really don't dare. It's not that I don't dare to say such a thing to the Empress Dowager. I'm afraid that Prince Chen will be angry. His Highness doesn't want me to meddle in other people's business. When I married into Prince Chen's mansion, His Highness told me that from now on, Princess Chen should be indifferent and natural. Don't extend your hand too far and make the Empress Dowager and His Majesty angry. Prince Chen's mansion has never intervened in the family affairs of the ministers in the court. Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. What she meant was that Prince Chen's mansion would not form cliques, let alone get involved with the ministers because of interests. When she married into Prince Chen's mansion, Prince Chen had already warned her. Fifth girl. Old Madam was so angry that she wanted to hit the table. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhao Shiran hurriedly pulled Old Madam's sleeve and said with a sweet smile, "Fifth sister is right. Prince Chen is originally a quiet person and is not willing to meddle in the family affairs of the ministers. But Marquis Xing's mansion is different. After all, Marquis Xing's mansion is fifth sister's family. Even if fifth sister married into Prince Chen's mansion, Marquis Xing's mansion is still behind her." Her words very neatly explained the reason for Old Madam's anger, which could be regarded as fighting for a little time for Old Madam to think. With such a little time to think, Old Madam could not immediately fly into a rage and really scold Xiao Wanru. Their identities were different, and Xiao Wanru was now backed by Prince Chen's mansion. If Xiao Wanru angered Prince Chen, he would not be easy to deal with. Zhao Shiran had heard from her father repeatedly that Prince Chen was not as gentle and leisurely as he seemed to be. She could offend anyone but Prince Chen. Otherwise, she would definitely be in trouble. Since her father had said so, Zhao Shiran certainly could not do anything to Xiao Wanru, who was pretending to be a tiger. Not only could she not do anything to Xiao Wanru, but she also could not make Old Madam angry, lest things get out of hand in the end. No matter how different Marquis Xing's mansion is, it is still the mansion of the ministers. Although Prince Chen's mansion has fallen, it is still the mansion of the princes. I heard that Duke Yong's mansion got into trouble because it made friends with the princes, Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Her words not only made Old Madam's face change, but also Chu Qing's face change. Although the matter of Duke Yong's mansion was not clear, it was basically related to the two princes. They didn't know what Duke Yong had done to make the emperor so disgusted. The relationship between Prince Yu and Prince Zhou is also related to Duke Yong's mansion. If the relationship between Commandery Prince Qing and Marquis Xing's mansion is also related to Prince Chen, I don't know what the emperor will think. Seeing that the faces of several people in the room changed at the same time, Xiao Wanru continued. Old Madam gasped and felt a little flustered. Prince Chen and Commandery Prince Qing were not only the two princes, but also the two princes left by the late emperor. If both of them were related to Marquis Xing's mansion, would the emperor think that Marquis Xing's mansion had ulterior motives? Even if they did not have ulterior motives and it happened by accident, the emperor might still be suspicious of Marquis Xing's mansion. If it were in the past, Old Madam would not be afraid of the emperor's unreasonable suspicion. But now Marquis Xing's mansion could not withstand any storm. At this time, they should be more cautious. Any action that stood out could bring disaster to Marquis Xing's mansion. Commandery Prince Qing, this matter has something to do with you. What do you think? Do you want to change it or not? If you want to change it, you have your reasons. If you don't want to change it, you have your rules. You are a prince in the imperial court. At this time, it is not good for you to allow other mansions' ideas without saying anything. Before they came to their senses, Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes and directly made things difficult for Chu Qing, Commandery Prince Qing. Chapter 925. Chu Qing was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that Princess Chen, who looked delicate and gentle, would dare to make things difficult for him directly. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Commandery Prince Qing is a member of the royal family. It's up to Commandery Prince Qing to decide who to marry or not to marry. No one else can make the decision for him. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Chu Qing's face lightly, as if she didn't see old madam's sudden change of expression. Of course, Chu Qing's marriage should be decided by himself. Even if he couldn't make the decision, his elders would make the decision. Besides the emperor in the palace, his elders were the empress and the empress dowager. Although old madam was noble, she couldn't make the decision for Chu Qing. Fifth miss. Old madam tried to stop Xiao Wanru in a cold voice. Grandma, Commandery Prince Qing is of royal blood and has a noble identity. How can we make the decision for him? Grandma is also hesitant, and I don't dare to say anything. The best way is to follow Commandery Prince Qing's decision. Xiao Wanru said unmoved. Her eyebrows were delicate. If she smiled slightly, she would make people feel that she was charming and delicate. However, if she slightly darkened her face, there would immediately be a sense of coldness, which diluted her original charm and made people not dare to look down on her. Although Chu Qing and Xiao Wanru had met before, they had just chatted for a while at that time, and he had always focused on Xiao Yanru. But now he took Princess Chen seriously. Princess Chen is right. I will go to the Imperial Palace to ask Imperial Grandmother to make a decision. Chu Qing nodded and agreed. Since Xiao Wanru mentioned the royal blood, he certainly couldn't show weakness and put all the blame on Marquis Xing's mansion. Old madam held her breath and couldn't let it go for a while. Zhao Shiran reacted quickly and immediately became happy. That's the best. I will ask for Empress Dowager's decision. If Empress Dowager agreed, this matter would be settled. So be it. Old madam said with a displeased look. Since the matter had been settled, Chu Qing stood up and said, Old madam, I will go to the Imperial Palace to ask Imperial Grandmother first. After Imperial Grandmother gives the order, I will discuss this matter with your mansion. Outside the Imperial Palace, when Chu Qing called Empress Dowager Queen, he often called her Imperial Grandmother like other princes. Sorry to trouble you, Commandery Prince Qing. Old madam was unhappy, but she had to show a polite smile. Chu Qing cupped his hands to Xiao Wanru again, then turned and strode away. Fifth young lady, second young lady and third young lady have agreed on this matter. Your second uncle also thinks it's a good idea. If it doesn't work out, I'm afraid that your two elder sisters will be ruined. Old madam said with red eyes. Grandmother, don't cry. How could fifth younger sister not care? She doesn't want her younger sisters to live well. Zhao Shiran consoled. Qing, don't, fifth sister's words, is to her. Fifth sister of Qing, and said. Qing. Qing, Princess, Qing, of Qing, Mu, who of Prince Qing, of Qing, you of King of suddenly of her, of Princess, except for Qing, was. But now, apart from her, who else can go to the Imperial Palace to see Empress Dowager immediately? Old madam said in a daze. Fifth sister, how about you? Zhao Shiran looked embarrassed and turned to Xiao Wanru. It seemed that she didn't know what to do and wanted to ask Xiao Wanru for advice. In terms of her current identity, Xiao Wanru was indeed very suitable for this kind of idea, which was related to the royal family. Grandma, even the emperor can't go against Empress Dowager's decision. Xiao Wanru was not surprised that the two of them were echoing each other. Fifth sister. Zhao Shiran still wanted to play the emotional card, but was interrupted by Xiao Wanru rudely. Grandma, do you want to persuade Empress Dowager to change her mind? Third girl, who is willing to marry her now? Old madam looked at Xiao Wanru and said, Qing, help her if you can. I know you are in a dilemma. You are also a new daughter-in-law, but I really have no choice. If we are still in Duke's mansion, I will beg Empress Dowager even at the cost of my dignity. But now, in this case, what about third girl? Fifth sister. Seeing that old madam was really dedicated to her sister, Xiao Kailing couldn't help but feel sad and looked at Xiao Wanru imploringly. Her sister's current situation was indeed not very good. Even her mother said that it was difficult for her third sister to find a good husband now, not to mention that her third sister was not young. Grandma, Commandery Prince Qing's mansion is not a beautiful place. Since second sister doesn't want to go there, she must have her reasons. Originally, second sister was very happy about this marriage. Xiao Wanru said calmly. Old Madam wanted to encourage everyone to force her to enter the imperial palace and be a guarantor for this matter. Not to mention that she had never had such an idea. Even if she had such an idea, she would never be manipulated by them at this time. It was not a day or two that Old Madam had a kind face but evil heart. Hearing what she said, Xiao Kailing immediately gave up. She looked at Old Madam in confusion and secretly glanced at her a few times. Others didn't know Xiao Jia's character, but everyone in the mansion knew it. She was mean, sinister, and opportunistic. She flattered the mother and daughter of the second branch shamelessly, but she was particularly vicious to those who were inferior to her. Would such a person really care about third sister and leave a good marriage for third sister, just as grandmother said? It seemed that she had to talk to her mother later and ask her mother to inquire more about it in case she fell into Xiao Jia's trap. Thinking of this, Xiao Kailing stopped interrupting. Although she was still paying attention to the movement in the room, she lowered her head and didn't want to interrupt anymore. Seeing her like this, Old Madam was so angry that her nose was about to smoke. The people of the third branch were really useless. Look at this girl. It was obvious that she was fighting for the interests of the third branch, but she seemed to be tied up and didn't say a word. Grandma, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Xiao Wanru stood up. Fifth Miss, do you dislike me? Old Madam didn't achieve her goal, so her face darkened and her words became impolite. As a granddaughter, how dare I dislike you, Grandma? But when I came here just now, Prince told me to go back early. If I go back late, I'm afraid that Prince's medicine won't be used again. Prince has always been bad-tempered, so someone should remind him again and again to take medicine. Xiao Wanru said. She looked calm with a little worry. Everyone knew that Prince Luqian was in poor health. Some people also knew that Prince Luqian lost his temper, and Old Madam happened to be one of those people who knew it. She knew how much the Empress Dowager valued Prince Chen's health. Every time he was unwilling to take medicine, the Empress Dowager was so worried that she couldn't even eat. In the big world, Prince Chen's taking medicine was the most important thing. Next time when you go out, get the medicine for Prince Luqian first, so that he won't always use this reason. Although Old Madam had to let her go, she still said angrily. Yes. Xiao Wanru said, but it was obvious that she was not in the mood to answer. Old Madam was angry and sullen, but she couldn't do anything to Xiao Wanru. After all, Prince Chen was still waiting to take medicine. If she missed the time and hurt Prince Chen, she couldn't bear the responsibility. Seeing Xiao Wanru leave slowly with the servant girl, Old Madam picked up the teacup at hand and smashed it hard on the ground. She used too much force and smashed the Buddha beads she had worn on her hand. Some of the beads were broken and the pieces flew out. The room suddenly became quiet. Several attendants were trembling with fear as they looked at the broken Buddhist prayer beads on the ground. Their faces were deathly pale. When the Buddha beads were broken last time, several servants in the room were punished, including a favored principal servant girl. Old Madam, don't be angry. We can think about it in the long run in the future. The fifth Miss is Princess Chen now. Her identity is different, but the identity can also make our mansion more confident. Look, Commandery Prince Qing is here today, isn't he? Nanny Yu said with a smile and walked over to pick up the Buddha beads. Old Madam, the beads on the top are not very good. But a few days ago, the monks of Huaguang Temple said that the string of Buddha beads you sent to consecrate was consecrated by the abbot. Now it is being worshipped. If you want to use it, you can go and get it tomorrow. It is consecrated by the abbot. How many people in the capital city can get the Buddha beads consecrated by the abbot of Huaguang Temple? Nanny Yu knew Old Madam's mind best. At this time, of course, she chose her favorite topic. Although she looked smiling, she secretly wiped a cold sweat. Fortunately, when she got the news a few days ago, she didn't have time to report it to Old Madam because she was busy. She wanted to find a suitable opportunity to say it, but now it happened. Grandma, you actually have the Buddha beads consecrated by the abbot of Huaguang Temple. That's great luck. I have long heard that the abbot of Huaguang Temple only consecrated people with great luck, but I have never seen it before. I didn't expect that you have such a good luck. Grandma, when you get the Buddha beads, you must show them to your granddaughter-in-law so that she can also benefit from you. Zhao Shiran said with a smile. She helped pick up the 2 beads that had fallen on the ground and sent them to Old Madam with a handkerchief. Old Madam's face softened a little, and she scolded with an unkind face, "Put it. This servant girl is more and more ignorant of her family background now. If there is no Marquis Xing's mansion, how can she climb the high branch of Prince Chen's mansion?" Nanny Yu took the 2 beads handed over by Zhao Shiran, and then carefully placed them on the table in front of Old Madam. When she was about to persuade her, she suddenly heard Old Madam say to herself, "No, I have to let this girl know that I can let her marry well, but I can also let her live a bad life." Being rejected by a junior, Old Madam felt that she had lost face. This girl didn't treat her as a grandmother, so she couldn't blame her for not treating her as a granddaughter. Nanny Yu was flustered. She moved her hand, and a bead almost fell to the ground. Chapter 926. Your Highness, Old Madam is very angry. When Yujia left, she deliberately glanced at Old Madam and saw the undisguised disgust in Old Madam's eyes. She was very worried. She and I have no friendship before. Xiao Wanru said casually. She just wanted to save face. They just looked good on the surface. Of course, Xiao Wanru was willing to maintain this good image for the time being. She still wanted to dig out more secrets from Old Madam and Marquis Xing's mansion. As for Old Madam, she had not regarded her as an elder since she had plotted against her again and again. The lesson she learned in the last life made her understand such a bloodline. The lesson of her last life made her understand that it was better to have no relatives. Old Madam will harm you. Chu Lu also became uneasy. Has she ever not harmed me? Xiao Wanru said indifferently. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all when she mentioned Old Madam and didn't care too much about Old Madam. Since it was related to the bloodline, she didn't need to care about Old Madam. She would only resist Old Madam's means more fiercely. Old Madam must know something about what happened in the past. Xiao Wanru didn't believe that she didn't know anything. But even if she knew something, she was still so mean and vicious to her brother and sister. She vowed to kill her brother and sister from Marquis Xing's mansion and make her brother and sister become the bloody mud paving the way for the second branch to rise. In the last life, she knew nothing, so she was deceived. In this life, how could she be manipulated and trampled on by these people? Your Highness, is the former heir not Old Madam's biological son? Yujia couldn't help but be surprised. If he was her biological son, how could he have such a mother? It doesn't matter whether he is or not. Xiao Wanru raised the corner of her mouth and showed a cold smile. In her heart, the glory and wealth of Marquis Xing's mansion, which she relies on, are the highest. With glory and wealth, Old Madam didn't care about anything else. Fifth sister, please wait a minute. Zhao Shiran caught up with her from behind. Because he ran in a hurry, he panted and called out. Your Highness, please wait. The servant girl who followed her said loudly while supporting her. Xiao Wanru stopped and watched Zhao Shiran coming over in a hurry. First sister-in-law, what else can I do for you? When Zhao Shiran approached, Xiao Wanru asked calmly with indifference in her watery eyes. This person was also restless, but if it didn't concern her, she was willing to turn a blind eye to it. Fifth sister, let me send you off. Zhao Shiran laughed. Thank you, sister-in-law. Xiao Wanru nodded and walked casually. With her current status, it was the most appropriate thing for Zhao Shiran to send her out. Fifth sister, don't be angry. Grandma is old and always has some thoughtlessness. She is also very concerned about the marriage of my sisters. What she said just now was not pleasant to hear. Please forgive her for the sake of Grandma's old age. Zhao Shiran followed Xiao Wanru out and tried to persuade her eagerly. Xiao Wanru pursed her lips and said lightly, "So what if I don't want to forgive you?" Zhao Shiran was almost choked by Xiao Wanru's words. She had imagined many reactions from Xiao Wanru. She could be aggrieved, indifferent, or angry. But she had never thought that Xiao Wanru would say such rebellious words. If the censor knew about it, if the censor knew that, with her status as Princess Chen, she would definitely be accused of being unfilial. "First sister-in-law, do you think I shouldn't have said that?" Xiao Wanru said lightly with a bit of leisurely smile, as if she didn't know how disobedient and unfilial what she had said just now was. "Fifth sister, don't say it casually. If others hear it, it will not be good and even affect Prince Chen's reputation." Zhao Shiran reacted and hurriedly lowered her voice. She looked around and breathed a sigh of relief when she found that no one was paying attention to them. "I'll just say it to you. You won't spread it out, right?" Xiao Wanru glanced at Zhao Shiran calmly. Her calm face showed no fear or panic at all. Zhao Shiran's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly felt that she had misjudged Princess Chen in front of her. Xiao Wanru might care about this little reputation before she got married, but what about Xiao Wanru who had married Prince Chen now? Would she still care about such a little reputation? Moreover, what she said just now was a warning to herself. Zhao Shiran was sure that if she revealed a word, she would not have a good life in the future. From some of the things she found out, Princess Chen was already very powerful before she got married. Now that she had Prince Chen's mansion as her backing, she was even more powerful. Before marrying into the family, Zhao Shiran didn't care about Xiao Wanru at all. She thought that Xiao Wanru was just a granddaughter who came back to reunite with her family. What she cared about was Xiao Yanru. The first Miss Xiao was really talented and beautiful and famous in the capital. Therefore, she casually schemed against Xiao Wanru. However, she didn't expect that she not only failed to deal with Xiao Wanru, but also irritated Xiao Caihuan, so that she not only lost face on the wedding day, but also fell out of favor with old madam. Later, after calming down and investigating carefully, she realized that she was wrong. The fifth Miss Xiao, who she thought was not powerful, was actually the most powerful. The fifth Miss Xiao, who lived in Marquis Xing's mansion quietly, lived a smooth life even though she was not liked by old madam and schemed against by madam of Marquis Xing. Moreover, she married Prince Chen, who was most favored by the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. "Fifth sister, don't worry. I'm not such an ignorant person." Zhao Shiran smiled a little awkwardly. She had thought that she had the initiative in her hands, but now she found that she actually had nothing in her hands. She needed to be more careful in front of Princess Chen in front of her. "Thank you, eldest sister-in-law. In the future, you will be in charge of the inner court of Marquis Xing's mansion. However, Madam of Marquis Xing is still recuperating on the mountain, and I don't know when she will come down the mountain. Before I return to the mansion, I heard that Madam of Marquis Xing and old Madam are as close as mother and daughter. After such a long time, as a mother, she will definitely miss her daughter." Xiao Wanru said lightly. Zhao Shiran's eyes twitched, and a thought suddenly flashed in her mind. Her eyes became flustered. Madam of Marquis Xing, Jiang, was not in Marquis Xing's mansion now, and she didn't even come out when Xiao Hua and got married. In fact, no one believed her words about recuperating and recuperating. No matter how much she recuperated, she was not so sick that she couldn't get up. Why couldn't she even attend her son's wedding? Because of this, there were many rumors about Madam of Marquis Xing, and she didn't want Jiang to come back. No one wanted to have a mother-in-law for no reason. What's more, she was a troublesome mother-in-law. Mother is recuperating on the mountain. No matter how worried grandma is about mother's health, she can't come back. Zhao Shiran composed herself and said with a smile. "Is that what you think, first sister-in-law? You really underestimate Marquis Xing relying on her relationship with old madam. Madam of Marquis Xing has been holding the backyard of Marquis Xing's mansion in the palm of her hand for so many years, which is not something that a woman from an ordinary family can do." Xiao Wanru said extremely calmly. "Fifth sister, you mean?" Zhao Shiran couldn't stand it anymore and asked cautiously. "What I mean?" I don't mean anything. It's just that second aunt is in a bad mood and likes to torment people. If you invite second madam back, I'm afraid that you won't be able to make decisions in the future. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said meaningfully. Zhao Shiran was smart, and it was easy to talk to smart people. Looking at her thoughtful look, Xiao Wanru knew that she must be thinking of a way. First sister-in-law, I'll go back first. Thank you for seeing me off. Xiao Wanru turned around and said with a smile when they were about to reach the parking place in front. I'm not in a hurry. I'll see you off for another distance. Zhao Shiran said politely. First sister-in-law, don't go. There will be dust when the carriage turns around later. You should stay far away from it. Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Then she walked to the carriage with the two maids. Zhao Shiran moved his feet and wanted to follow her. However, he felt that Xiao Wanru's words made sense, so he didn't force himself to follow her. After watching Xiao Wanru take a few more steps, Zhao Shiran suddenly became anxious and said loudly, Fifth sister, I don't mean you any harm. Xiao Wanru stopped, but then slowly walked forward and said, First sister-in-law, if you need any help in the future, I will help you if I can, but I hope that what you told me is the truth. Fifth sister, don't worry. I will definitely tell you the truth. Zhao Shiran said in a hurry. First sister-in-law, Marquis Xing's mansion is a secret mansion. You'd better be careful. Xiao Wanru said very softly, but Zhao Shiran heard it. Frowning, Zhao Shiran stood where she was and watched the two maids help Xiao Wanru get into the carriage. Then the low-key but luxurious carriage of Prince Chen's mansion turned around and slowly passed in front of her. Coincidentally, the distance between them was neither too far nor too close, just enough for her to eat the dust. Watching the carriage go away, Zhao Shiran narrowed her eyes slightly. She was also a cautious person and observed carefully. When the carriage turned around in front of her, she could see some dark patterns in the shape of butterfly wings on the corners of the carriage, which looked more like a carriage for a woman. There was no female master in Prince Chen's mansion, so it was impossible to specially prepare a carriage for a woman. Therefore, the carriage in front of her should be specially prepared by Prince Chen for Xiao Wanru. Prince Chen really treated Xiao Wanru differently. No wonder Xiao Wanru could challenge old madam now. What about her? Would she stand on old madam's side or Xiao Wanru's? If it was in the past, she might think that old madam's side was better. After all, old madam was righteous and was her elder. But now, thinking of Madame Jiang, Marquis Xing's wife, who was still in Yuhui nunnery, Zhao Shiran felt that no matter how well she treated old madam, she couldn't compare to the mother-daughter relationship between Madame Jiang and old madam for so many years.